know a little bit who I am. So I love to read with a particular emphasis on historical reference and legal review. I've read about just about every piece of legislation I could put my hand on. So yes, I often go to justice.gc.ca and read everything. I am at my second full lecture now. So it's quite a job because it's 17 story thick of law. So I've read everything. Legal review, whenever I get a court case, I love to read about it. So I do this type of thing. But one sure thing is I am not a leader of any kind. I've done that because I had nothing better to do. That's the only reason. You can see me as an information sponge if you prefer. I swallow information just like a sponge swallow liquid, and then when you twist it, well, it rejects it back. So that's what you're in for today. Though I am a true patriot, I love everything about this country, but not the government of this country. It's more about the people and the landmass and the historical value that brought us here. Donc, en fait, c'est ça. Je proviens de l'État national du Québec, et puis vous prendrez note que je ne dis pas la province de Québec. Je vais vous en parler un peu plus tard. Je me suis retiré en 2008. J'ai pris ma retraite des forces canadiennes, plutôt de la marine royale canadienne, pour des raisons médicales. J'étais quand même au grand jury de 2015 en tant que représentant principal, si on veut, au nom de Denis Paiement. C'est lui la victime principale, et c'est grâce à lui qu'on était capable de faire un grand jury. Je dirais bien aussi à cause de lui, mais ça, c'est pas vrai, c'est à cause d'un autre organisme, on va vous en parler un peu plus tard. J'adore lire, en particulier les références historiques, et puis tout ce qui a trait aux lois. Tellement que je fais ma deuxième lecture complète de tout ce qui a été présenté sur le site de justice.gc.ca. Par contre, je ne suis pas un chef, pas du tout. Je suis plutôt une éponge à information qui va absorber tout ce qui va être envoyé vers moi. Puis quand on tord l'éponge, ben, je fais comme une éponge, je la recrache. Donc c'est pour ça que vous êtes ici aujourd'hui, pour absorber cette information-là. Et préparez-vous parce qu'il y en a une barge, comme on dit en français. Et puis, par contre, je suis un patriote. J'aime tout ce qui a trait à ce pays qui est le Canada. Mais c'est sûrement pas nos chefs politiques ou nos imbéciles qui se prennent pour nos gouvernants alors qu'ils sont rien d'autre que des servants publics. J'aime plutôt les gens du pays, les traditions historiques et surtout le territoire. Donc, c'est pour ça qu'on fait ça aujourd'hui. Il n'est pas question que j'abandonne 1 centimètre carré de terrain à qui que ce soit. Donc, bienvenue encore. All right, part 1. I may not translate everything. I will translate for the purpose of Carl's life for a short moment, but I will certainly not do this thing twice because we're going to be in for 8 hours, so... A grand jury. So I will not translate this part. Un grand jury, vous pouvez le taper sur Google, vous pouvez voir ce qu'est un grand jury, but I will not translate this part. It's much too complicated. The only thing that I will say in French, un grand jury, ça a 800 ans. Je ne l'ai pas inventé. C'est à la portée de tout le monde de faire un grand jury, puis je vous supplie d'en faire si vous avez une cause contre l'État. So I will not translate everything like I just said twice. I will certainly not translate the grand jury part. I will stick to the English part for that. If you feel like you need to know more, you can just Google grand jury, and if you feel like informing yourself more, you can always organize a grand jury yourself. There's nothing magical there. It's not out of reach from any of you. If I've done it, you can do it too. It's quite simple, actually. It's in common law. So let's get going. So what's a grand jury? A grand jury is a group of citizens which is empowered by law, and we're talking about common law here, to conduct legal proceedings and investigate potential criminal conduct and determine whether a criminal charge should be brought. A grand jury is separated from the court, which do not preside over its functioning. So the Ministry of Justice or the actual de facto single judge court do not overview a grand jury. It's totally independent in nature. So grand jury were once common across Canada. Archives shows grand jury process from Quebec as early as 1764. It was then called the quarter session of the peace. So I put the emphasis on the word peace. This is why you do a grand jury. And the latest was done in PEI in 1871, but we do have record until 1984 for some procedure for grand jury. Grand jury celebrated its 800th birthday in 2015, on the 15th of June to be precise, and I'll get back to this later. The Magna Carta Libertatum was executed on June 15, 1215, which was 800 years ago or so. It laid the basis to the grand jury. So it's not to say that the first grand jury happened on that date, but it was the beginning of it, and then over the year the process refined, and they ended up with the full-scale grand jury that we know of today. Canada abolished the grand jury in 1984. It was unlawful, illegal, and unconstitutional, and I would add that it was also immoral. So, and I'll put a little bracket here, they didn't have any right to do so. So they've done it, it was illegal. So, yeah, screw that. Alright, so the motto of the grand jury of 2015 in French, Courage, Vérité, Justice, c'était notre slogan. In English, Courage, Truth, and Justice in Latin, and please excuse my Latin, Virtus, Veritatis, Justitiae. So that's what motivated us to do the grand jury. Grand jury can be described as the shield and sword of the people, a shield for the people from abusive indictment of the government, and a sword for the people to cut away any crime by private individual or public servant. According to the grand jury 2015, this is how we've done it, the constitution of the 2015 grand jury was composed of 64 pages, a large part of which are annexed to procedure, including the notarial procedure of the Chamber of Notaries of Quebec and the Rome Agreement for the description of the general state of operation and protection, which was aligned on the International Criminal Court. So yeah, we did include in there the status of Rome, the reason why all participants and their family, of course, in the activity of the 2015 Grand Jury of the People of Canada are subject to international diplomatic immunity at level 5 and are protected by the signing of the Rome Agreement by Canada. So yes, we did protected our member, our witnesses, and everybody else that came around, of course, the juror and the prosecutor as well. Basically, all of those who participated in 2015 grand jury are untouchable. Anybody lays on their end on us, we have diplomatic immunity, and we are protected, and it's automatically an international crime to touch us. In any way, shape, or form, by the way, they don't have to physically harm us. If they're threatening us, well, they are right there committing a crime. So grand jury, and back to history, and a grand jury in Anglo-American law, a group that examine accusation against person charged with crime, and if the evidence warrants, makes formal charge on which the accused person are later tried. Grand jury does not, well, let me read. Through the grand jury, layperson participate in bringing suspect to trial, though it holds judicial inquiry. The grand jury does not decide guilt or innocence. That's in criminal matter. Civilian is a little different.
N'oublie pas le français, s'il vous plaît.
Ouais, je vais pas te traduire l'histoire du grand jury, c'est trop compliqué, c'est ce que je disais tout à l'heure. J'aimerais bien pouvoir vous le traduire, mais je passerai pas 8 heures debout ici au micro à vous expliquer ça. Donc, pour le grand jury, là, on est en partie historique. Si vous voulez en savoir plus, je vous incite à taper sur Google grand jury donc, et puis vérifier. Là, je vais en faire de la traduction, mais c'est ça. Its function is inquisitorial and accusatorial. Unlike the petty jury, which tries case, the grand jury's function is to decide whether there is probable cause or prima facie evidence to believe that a person has committed a crime. Should it so decide, an indictment, a formal accusation of crime is returned, and the accused must stand trial before a petty or trial jury whose duty is to determine the question of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The grand jury enjoys a greater independence than the petty jury. It is instructed by the court of the grand jury, by the way, prosecutor on question of law and fact, but its investigation are relatively free from supervision. Although the jury works closely with the prosecutor, it is not formally under his control. So that's exactly how we've done it. In 2015, I was the lead prosecutor. People would not be working for me. I would be merely their teacher about something, in facts mainly, and they got to decide in the end. By the way, this comes from Encyclopedia Britannica, if you want to know about it. So the grand jury plays and I'll add the word, a very important role in the criminal process, but not one that involves a finding of guilt or punishment of a party. Instead, a prosecutor, yours truly, will work with a grand jury to decide whether to bring criminal charge or an indictment against a potential defendant, usually reserved for serious felonies. Grand jury member may be called for jury duty for months at a time, but need only to appear in court for a few days out of every month. Regular court trial jury are usually composed of 6 to 10 people. It is 10 to 12, sorry. It is 10 in Canada. But in the federal system, a grand jury can be of 16 to 23, which Canada has 23 people history. Some jurisdictions in the United States use 16 people for grand jury. Grand jury are tools used as part of criminal procedure to bring an indictment against a defendant. However, they're not always required and in some cases not even used. So how does a grand jury work? So, while all states have provision in their law that allows for grand jury, and we're talking about common law jurisdiction here when we're naming states, roughly half the states don't use them. Courts are often preliminary hearing prior to criminal trial, which are adversarial in nature. As with grand jury, preliminary hearings are meant to determine whether there is enough evidence or probable cause to indict a criminal suspect. Unlike a grand jury, a preliminary hearing is usually open to the public and involves lawyers on both sides and a judge. Not so with grand jury, which only involve the judge, that means there are 23 of them, right? The juror, and the prosecutor. And there's a reason for that. So sometimes a preliminary hearing precedes a grand jury. One of the biggest differences between the two is the requirement that the defendant request a preliminary hearing, although the court may decline the request. Let's keep on going with the proceeding. Our grand jury work is much more relaxed than normal court proceeding. There is no judge present and frequently there are no lawyer except for the prosecutor, which by the way, I am no lawyer. I'm just a regular man. The prosecutor will explain the law to the jury and work with them to gather evidence and hear testimony, exactly what we've done in 2015. Under normal courtroom rules of evidence, exhibit and other testimony must adhere to strict rule before admission. However, a grand jury has broad power to see and hear almost anything they would like. And here's the correction to the previous page when they say there's more to it. However, unlike the vast majority of trial, grand jury proceedings are kept in strict confidence. So in other words, it is private hearing. Donc les auditions de grand jury sont privées. Il y a 2 raisons pour ça. It encourages witnesses to speak freely and without fear of retaliation. Donc ça encourage les témoins à parler librement et sans avoir peur de se faire taper sur les doigts plus tard. And it protects the potential defendant's reputation in case the jury decide not to indict. So ça protège donc les accusés si dans le cas où le grand jury décide de ne pas procéder. Grand jury's decision and prosecutor discretion. Grand jury do not need a unanimous decision for all members to indict, but it does need a majority of 50% agreement for an indictment depending on the jurisdiction. Even though a grand jury may not choose to indict, a prosecutor may still bring the defendant to trial if he or she thinks that he or she has strong enough case. However, the grand jury proceedings are often a valuable test run for prosecutor in making the decision to bring the case. And the grand jury If the grand jury choose to indict, the trial will most likely begin faster, of course, because the inquiry, the preliminary hearing has already been done. Without a grand jury indictment, the prosecutor has to demonstrate to the trial judge that she or he has enough evidence to continue with the case. However, with a grand jury indictment, the prosecutor can skip that step and proceed directly to trial. Alright, so now I'm going to speak specifically about the grand jury that we've done in Canada in 2015. Let me remind you before we get started with this part that it was only regular people who's done that, nobody involved with law society, except maybe for witnesses. So here we go, the initial process. A constitution was written for the grand jury proceeding in order that the participants are fully aware of their responsibility and duty to serve on a grand jury. The grand jury constitution was open for a period of time for the proposal of amendment and/or modification. It took me a year, me and some other people, but I wrote it down, to write the constitution of the grand jury. The grand jury's constitution also outlined the general obligation of all members and the process that would be followed. Yes, you can do 20 different grand jury and have 20 different constitution about it. Donc oui, vous pouvez faire 20 grands jurys et avoir 20 différentes constitutions. In our case, for the 2015 grand jury, there were 7 drafts during the development of the constitution, so that's why it took a year. Il y a eu donc 7 copies qui ont été faites de la constitution du grand jury avant qu'on adopte la constitution finale. A draft were reviewed by a committee of 3, which we call the court committee. 3 people were selected, donc il y a eu 3 personnes sur le comité de la cour pour déterminer si on était pour présenter cette constitution-là ou pas avant le grand jury. The constitution was submitted to the grand jury after the draw for consensus of approval. I'll comment on this one. So yes, we did write the constitution, then we submitted to the grand jury people for consensus. And here's a little trick. If we didn't have all 23 to agree on all 64 pages of the grand jury, it would have never happened. So it was really tricky. It could have failed right there, and I would not be here today. The period for the potential registration was 1 year for the jury candidate. The draw was held on June 15, 2015. There were 4 preliminary hearings publicly held through Hangout. And Angel can vouch about that. She was there. Donc, il y a eu 4 audiences qui ont été faites avant le grand jury par Hangout pour décider si on était pour le faire ou pas. C'était quand même intéressant. The grand jury was initiated by, now he's taken a break, but by Denis Paiement. So, donc l'instigateur du grand jury, c'était Denis Paiement. Sans lui, sans sa cause, il n'y en aurait pas eu non plus de grand jury. So it began. So we didn't arrive at the grand jury with our hand empty. In the case of Angèle, she probably went to court a million times before that. In the case of Denis, was a little different. In the area where we live, there is no judge. So when there's no judge, you address to a notary public. So that's exactly what we've done. Prior to the grand jury, and I'd say roughly 8 to 10 months before the grand jury, we addressed and presented before a notary public for arbitration. The name of the notary public was Ghislain Poudrier. Then the defendant was CSST, was summoned to and appear at this hearing. They sent 2 employees to represent the corporation there before a notary public. The case was a civil case at this point, because remember, grand jury does an inquisition or an inquiry to find out if there's enough evidence for criminal charge. The notary public does not do that. The notary public reviewed the case with the accused being present and presented a judgment in favor of the plaintiff, in favor of Denis. 23 items were reviewed to determine if the accused party was operating according to their own legislation, which is LATMP. It stands for Loi sur les accidents du travail et maladies professionnelles, or in English?
Similar to WCB.
WCB. So I don't know what WCB means.
Workmen's Compensation Board.
Here we go. Workman Compensation Board. The accused were then found guilty on all 23 counts, failing to respect the LATMP. Donc, ils ont été trouvés coupables de ne pas respecter 23 points de loi. And I may add here that the LATMP is a totally incomprehensible law, which is about this thick, and it's composed of 750 something articles. So, and I can also add, as a personal comment here, that they don't respect any of these articles on 400,000 cases. So it's not the first time. They have a lot of experience about screwing people up. All right, so the grand jury, we told you a little earlier, it didn't take all jurors to agree. It's not a consensus, it needs only 50%. So here's the proof of the people. These are juror signature that you see here on the screen. This is the first page that they pretty much agree. We had the majority of the grand jury, but the beauty of it is that because not everybody could be there when we read the judgment, their electronic signature was enough. All they needed to do was to phone us and say, pull my name out. Otherwise, it is considered signed. In other words, when we had the signature period for reading the final judgment, we had a consensus. And I'll add on this, there was one person, one human, I don't know if he is, but anyway, comment, that later withdrew his signature. That was between 60 and 90 days later. Well, too bad, because in common law, if you don't pull back your signature within 30 days, it is forever. So even if you change your mind. Donc oui, il y a eu quelqu'un qui a changé d'idée dans les 60 à 90 jours qui suivent le grand jury. Malheureusement pour lui, en droit commun, si tu ne retires pas ta signature dans les 30 jours, elle est maintenant là pour toujours. So now you can see the second page, and this is why I'm saying that their electronic signature is enough. Nobody has said that we were full or they just simply couldn't be there. By then, it was 6 months in the process, 6 weeks in the process, and involved lots of dollars for people coming from all over Quebec to Cowansville, Quebec, which is a little town in Quebec. To sign, so they simply put their name under the electronic form. Of course, we don't abuse signature from others, so I would never have signed in their name in place, but like I'm saying, their name's on the sheet, it's enough, otherwise it would have been barred. So from roughly mid-2014 to June 2015, there was like I said earlier, the development of grand jury constitution and opening for the registration of jurors. So yes, it took 1 year to gather 23 good souls to come and sit. But of course, I needed to explain to each and every one of them what a grand jury was, the entire whole 9 yards, because nobody had ever heard of that in that point in 100 years. So June 15, 2015, which was exactly the 800th anniversary of grand jury, we did the random draw of the juror. It was on purpose that we've done it on that date. We wanted to celebrate the 800th birthday appropriately. From September 29 and 20, 19 and 20 of 2015, we started hearing the case. These 2 days were really hard. We started very early in the morning, ending at 10 at night for both days. So it was a long weekend. We did the same 2 weeks later. I think we've missed on the date here, but I don't want to be confused, so I'll just read the page. Actually, it was October 3rd and 4th. We kept on proceeding. Those were 2 really hard days again. More than 12 hours each, close to 16 hours. Then you can vow about that. Even Angèle, les journées des audiences du grand jury, c'était quasiment 16 heures, les 4 jours. So in total, we recorded 39 hours of taping about the grand jury, so that was quite long. And on October 17th, we read that judgment that you see there to the people and for signature as well. But once again, like I said, half of them would have been enough, and you can see on the document that we do have half of them. Everything that we've did up until that point in 2015 was duly notarized. So if anybody doubt that my legal or my authentic act before a notary public were illegal, well, I dare you to challenge me, because my notary is awaiting to come and challenge your notary act. So if you have got a house, chances are you will not sleep in tonight, because they'll be mine. Everything was notarized. And at the end, the notary public would not even charge us anymore. Everything was free because he knew we had a winning case. So back to timeline a little bit. October 20th, the signature of the judgment. October 30th was the deadline, so they were giving 10 days to comply with the grand jury's decision. Donc ils ont eu 10 jours pour se conformer aux décisions du grand jury, chose qu'ils n'ont pas fait d'ailleurs. So they have never done that until today, and back since 2015. So if you count quickly, it's almost 4 years. We have a public mandate, the prosecutor, the grand jury. I'll get back to that in a moment. Between October 20th and December 5th, we did several notifications of the judgment to the accused party. So each prosecutor would need to go to the accused of their choice, or well, it's not really a choice, and notify them with the judgment. Donc, entre le 20 octobre et le 5 décembre, chacun des accusateurs a dû aller vers l'accusé pour lui porter son jugement. Puis je peux vous dire qu'on s'est bien amusé. So we had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah, right. So February 3rd, 2016 was the date of the official dissolution of the tribunal itself, which means the juror duty was over on that date. There was, though, maintenance of the committee, the prosecutor, the mandate, and the judgment. These all 4 items are still valid and active to this day. Donc le comité existe toujours. Les représentants, donc les j'ai un blanc. Ouais, mais ça c'est en anglais. Anyway, so we, the prosecutor, are still valid. The mandate that we've received is still valid, and the judgment is still valid. So what's the mandate that we, prosecutor, have received? It's quite simple. It's 5 lines, so allow me. That's dated back to the date of the judgment on November 7, 2017. Here's our mandate. The prosecutor, under the authority of the tribunal and the people, which is most important, it was people, right, who gave us this mandate. Above, name in the judgment, so the list that you saw a moment ago, to conduct a criminal investigation, serious and severe, for the fact mentioned above, by all means useful and necessary to prevent crime, such as the equivalent power of a judge of instruction in law of France. Remember, the grand jury does not have power to make an indictment in criminal charge per se, and especially not to decide if they're guilty or innocent. So we needed a second procedure, which we've done, as an equivalent of a judge of peace. We've used judge of instruction in law of France because this happened in Quebec, and there's a mixed law system in Quebec. There's not really common law. When I say mixed, it's more of an abuse of word because it's only French law. And so we had to have those power equivalent to France because that's where it comes from. So now, the grand jury by the number, will say these both in French and English. So 6 weeks, 6 semaines, 23 jurors, 23 grands jurés, 1 notary public, un notaire, 1 lead prosecutor, un chef, comment est-ce qu'on les a nommés? J'ai un blanc. Bon, 6 assistant prosecutors, donc 6 assistants au principal. 1 court secretary, un secrétaire de la cour. 1 court president, un président de la cour. 2 technicians, 2 techniciens. 1 public judgment, un jugement public. 1 constitution, donc une constitution. 2 victims deceased, 2 victimes qui sont décédées immédiatement avant ou pendant ou après le grand jury. 1 closed major insurance corporation, CSST, donc une compagnie majeure d'assurance de personnes fermées. 2 resignations, 2 démissions donc. The Minister of Labor, which is not Minister of anything but invention of his mind, called Sam Ahmad from the National State of Quebec, and we also had the resignation of the President of CSST soon after, Michel Després. In the following 2 years, and that's a count that was kept by Angèle, because I don't care about politics, but she kept it. 19, that's not a small number, so that takes it to 20. 20 total resignation from member of the Liberal Party of the National Assembly of Quebec in the following 2 years. Donc, 20 démissions au total des libéraux de l'État national du Québec et de l'Assemblée nationale illégale. Over 70, because the list is in constant evolution, 70 dangerous delinquents to be controlled, notified through the judgment, donc 70 délinquants dangereux à contrôler, 78 corporations identified as criminal organization of high level, donc 78 corporations identifiées comme criminelles de très haut niveau, 110 criminal charges, all prosecuted by Angèle and I. In summary conviction, guilty on all counts. 110 chefs d'accusation criminels qui ont été procédés en procédure sommaire par Angèle et moi-même, et ils ont été trouvés coupables de tous les chefs d'accusation. $250,000 in equivalent of letter of change for CNESST for Denis Paiement. Donc 250 000 $ en lettre de change ou équivalent pour Denis Paiement. Et puis un montant illimité de cigarettes et de café. To this day, I still don't count. So an unlimited amount of cigarettes and coffee, and we still don't count them. And I've got coffee today, which counts as this. All right, I'll leave you a minute. Maureen's gonna go over the next 2 slides. You can read on this screen here some of the charges that were laid. There's 110 in total. Don't get us wrong, you may find this text a little bit weird because it's Google translated. We didn't break our ass getting back to the criminal code to check all the charge. Everything was done in French, remember. So take a moment. Some are very nasty. If you look, the very first one at the top, common law, ignorance of the law. But yeah, you may not understand all of them. Like I said, it's a Google translation. I'll take a moment and I'll take my breath and a sip of coffee. So enjoy. We're good. 20 minutes stuff. You can see here criminal negligence, actus reus mens rea. These are the 2 factors which are most important when you proceed in a criminal indictment. You need to be able to show the act, which is the easy part, but the intention, that's the hard part. So that's why it took so long for us to organize a grand jury. The intention, we needed to surrender that. Donc, actus reus mens rea, this is Latin. Quand tu fais une charge au criminel, il faut que tu sois en mesure de prouver l'acte en tant que tel, ce qui est la partie facile, mais aussi l'intention. Puis nous, c'est ce qui a été difficile, l'intention des criminels de continuer leur crime ou de le faire là une première fois.
How many was there in total again? 120?
110 charge, and we may miss some in there because we lack some space, but believe me, that's 3/4 of the criminal code. And if you don't believe me, you can check the criminal code because I've had enough of these criminal, and going through the criminal code in English, I didn't feel like it, honestly. We dumped it into Google and here are the results.
Okay, sorry.
All right, now we're going to talk about the case detail a little bit. We won't bug you for too long about that, but let's get in with more number. 7 cases were tried through the grand jury process in total, so we didn't just limit to Denis Paiement. We've had some other people coming in to show their own cause. We felt like, 100 years without a grand jury might as well do in grand, or big or tall, or, involved as much people as we could. So 4 causes were directly related to CSST. It was not only Denis Paiement, he was the main cause, but 3 other people came in with their own cause. Donc il y a eu 4 causes reliées à la CSST directement. Non seulement Denis Paiement, mais c'est ça, en plus 3 autres sont venus au grand jury avec leur propre cause CSST. And trust me, do not believe me, but trust me, I could have prosecuted 400,000 different cause against CSST during the grand jury without any problem. One was related to the Fédération of Quebec Maple Syrup Producer. I will refrain from telling you exactly what I think of these people, but you can imagine all the curse word in the world, and that would not even be enough. And we got Régent here, which is very much related to this cause. He lived it firsthand. If you'd ask him what he thinks about the Federation, he'd be worse than me. Donc la Fédération, je vais éviter de vous dire ce que je pense de eux autres pour rester poli, puis à cause de l'enregistrement, mais s'il fallait que je vous le dise, on sera encore ici dans 2 semaines, puis je serai encore en train de sacrer. Puis c'est ça, on a Régent qui est ici, qui en ferait probablement plus que moi, puis lui aussi, il est pas content contre eux autres. We had one cause related that was presented by Paul Leblanc, represented to the Federation of Caisse Populaire Desjardins. If you don't know about it, that's a saving and loan business in Quebec, which is so big that, anyway. And last but not least, which leads us directly to what we're doing today, there was one constitutional case. So after the grand jury was said and done, the CSST case was not enough for me to involve everybody in this country, so I jumped on the constitutional cause, and this is exactly why we're here. So here are the prosecutor of the grand jury, Marc Legault, which was represented by Chantal Benoit, Yves Saint-Martin, which was represented by me. The reason is because he died 2 weeks before the grand jury, and on his deathbed, he recognized me. I called him into the hospital. He said to me, I am happy to speak to you, and I've asked him verbally his permission to lead his cause and to take it as mine for the future, as best as I can, of course. Because he was supposed to be there, but yeah, he died. He knew he would die. It was a nasty moment. We went to his funeral less than 10 days before the grand jury. We were supposed to have his wife to prosecute, but she was devastated, as you can know. So I represented the cause as best as I could. So Yves Saint-Martin, may you rest in peace. And he was on my shoulder during the entire process. He seriously said to me, if you don't take it, I'm going to come back down from heaven and I'm going to kick your ass. So I didn't want that. So I took the cause as best as I could. And it was sad what happened to this man. Anyway, let's keep on going. We also had at the grand jury Michel Thibodeau, may he rest in peace. Fortunately for us, this is recorded. Michel was on oxygen and in his last mile. When he came to the grand jury, he gave it all. He died less than a year after the grand jury. I don't have the exact date, but yeah, this was a good man who also got hurt at work and never been compensated or healed about it. They told him that his sickness, which was pulmonary sickness, came from his dog. So this is how bad this stupid corporation is. We've got the document.
Got it.
Awesome.
You got it.
All right, so the next cause, which was against Fédération des Caisses Populaires Desjardins, was led by Paul Leblanc, who did the magistral work in showing that all mortgage in Canada, and in fact all of the banking system is corrupted to the core. They have no legal foundation, but not only that, especially for Caisse Populaire Desjardins, but everything they do is totally illegal. All your mortgage are illegal. And he also touched on taxes and income tax to show the same thing, but that was secondary to his own cause. Next is Jean-François Dubois, next is Denis Paiement, which was represented by me. This was the main cause. It was carefully tied to the grand jury. If I could not have presented Denis' cause, the grand jury would have never happened. It was mandatory for this case to be heard, unlike any of the other. Jean-François Dubois presented the constitutional case. He showed cause on why I'm calling Quebec a national state and not a province. Quebec has nothing legal, lawful, legitimate, or constitutional. They're basically a private corrupt corporation. They don't belong there. They're a bunch of criminal, and they're on the list of criminal. Last but not least, no, I'm not there yet. Yes, I am. Angèle Prince. She is a woman of great courage and integrity. She came to the grand jury. She presented a cause against the Quebec maple syrup producer. And once again, I'll refrain from telling you exactly what I think of these. Starts with a B and ends with asterisk. Anyway, I said it. Anyway, and at the time of the grand jury, when she came about, she was not fully and confident that it would work or in trust that it would work, but during the process something went on in her brain. She understood the power of the grand jury and she took it like if it was hers, and she brought it everywhere. She printed the signs and stuff, and there's nothing they haven't done, her and Régent, which is hereby present, after the grand jury. They haven't spent they haven't save any energy and carrying the grand jury as well as I did. So thank you to them. Donc après, pendant le grand jury, avant et pendant le grand jury, Angèle s'est présentée. Elle n'y croyait pas trop pendant le grand jury, mais par la suite, il y a quelque chose qui s'est passé dans son cerveau. Je ne sais pas si personnellement pour elle, je peux pas parler pour elle, mais pas loin, elle pourra vous le dire. Si c'était pendant ou après le grand jury, il y a quelque chose qui a déclenché. Elle a compris qu'est-ce qu'était un grand jury, le pouvoir que ça avait, et ils n'ont pas ménagé ni leurs efforts ni leur argent pour continuer le grand jury et parler au nom du grand jury après le grand jury. Et donc pour ça, je leur remercie. Régent est ici. Donc chapeau bas, toi, Régent. Merci d'avoir payé et d'avoir accompli d'être ici aujourd'hui pour le grand jury. Next picture. Here you will recognize Denis Paiement. We're going to get into his case very soon. He is hereby present. He can speak for himself. Donc Denis Paiement peut parler pour lui-même. Without this man, there would never have been a grand jury. There would have been nothing else anyway. We wouldn't even be here without all of his suffering. Donc à cause de toute la souffrance qu'il a endurée, toute la merde qu'il a endurée, c'est par rapport à ça qu'on est ici aujourd'hui. So we're going to briefly talk about his case. Tammy, how long do we have on the camera?
You're at 47 minutes.
13 minutes, all right. So then you will recognize this next picture here. I don't need the textbook now. We'll recognize this next picture. That happened into his house in Rivière-Rouge, or Sainte-Véronique if you prefer, which is part of Rivière-Rouge. The gentleman that you see leaning against the wall, it's not because the wall was about to fall. Oh yeah, the wall was about to fall, but that's not the reason he's there. This is our notary public, Ghislain Poudrier. He's overviewed everything that we've saw here in this picture. He's collecting evidence. Of course, now he's talking with Denis, right? But he's collecting evidence about everything that we presented at the grand jury. There would be much more to say, but yeah. This picture was taken shortly before Denis' house was stolen from him, and we'll show you about it in a moment. So I'll just read the page on the text on the next page. So Denis was injured, that's his story. Denis was injured in a workplace accident on July 21st, 2003, and here's a brief thing. On July 21st, 1969, Neil Armstrong said the lie about landing on the moon. So just a little connection like that because it's the same day. As a result, he lost both legs above the knee, which is weird because his name is Denis, but anyway, it doesn't work like that in French, believe me. If that's a joke, I can only do in English. So Denis was living in, and it's still true to this day, what I'm about to read, Denis was living in very poor conditions, so today is ultra very poor condition and appear to have fallen between the crack within the workplace insurance benefit. I will add in bracket that 400,000 case has fallen through the crack, so they must be freaking wide, the crack. The corporation which is responsible for solving workplace issue, they're a bunch of crooks. So Denis' living condition and subsequent treatment by CSST was compared to the CSST's own legislation and hereby proclaimed certain level of care be provided to injured worker. It was clear in the case of Denis that the CSST was not operating under their own expectation, so much so that 23 infractions were noted under that legislation. I told you earlier that it's an incomprehensible law, which is about this thick 750 article. Denis was entitled, and to this day is still entitled, to 23 measure of correction for his situation, and he gets nothing. You can see the state of his wheelchair today. Anybody here by the raise of hand think it is acceptable?
No, it's not.
Is it acceptable that he is?
No.
So don't raise your hand. So we've got
It wasn't acceptable.
So it's unacceptable, and to this day, the abuse and the crime is happening straight in your face. Donc aujourd'hui, jusqu'à ce jour, le crime a encore lieu. Est-ce que c'est acceptable que Denis vive dans ces conditions-là? Ça l'est pas. Ça l'est pas. And you should have seen how he got here. He needed to be drive when he could drive his own vehicle. Nothing is adapted, even in this place. So, tangible result. We did have some tangible result, and here you can see it. Then you would probably know way much more than I could ever tell about this little toy here. They wanted to shut him down at some point. I call this a candy bar because they wanted him to go and kill himself upon such a monster. But the matter of the fact is they still paid fully for this item that you see here. So the ATV itself is worth roughly $14,000, and the accessories that came around with it roughly $11,000. Denis still has this to this day, and they paid for it. Like I said, they wanted him to go kill himself on it. They thought if they give him that, he'd go waste himself in the wood and would not continue within the grand jury. After we received a letter of change for this item, I was able to speak with Denis, because he well understands when I'm speaking, in delaying for 10 months to go and get it. So, because I knew it was just a toy. So we had better thing to do. He understood that, so he delayed it as much as he can. When the check came to expire, or expiration date, he went and got it. All right, so they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So here I made sure that I integrated 6 different pictures in it. So this picture is worth 6,000 words. You can see that this is the vehicle that Denis needs. That's the type of trailer that he needs to put the ATV on. And why does he need such a trailer? Because maybe he has grocery, he needs to put it in the trunk in there. And of course, he's carrying a wheelchair. And I also, for the 6th picture, I provided a background. So just to understand how life is, because there was a garage door, and then he also needs a garage. Of course, Quebec received this thick of snow in the month of September. So, you know, you can't brush it. You can't brush the snow out of any of this. So it needs to be put in a garage. So yeah, these people, I wrote them, if I remember correctly, 64 pages of a written paper according to the law. They didn't understand a single word, so I sent them a picture instead. Now, we're going to take a small break, if you allow me, before we get into a few videos, because here I would like to invite Denis to comment on these videos. It is his story, and you will hear from him. We need to change the CD, and I need to drink something. So we're going to start to make a short break here. Thank you for your attention. 10 minutes.
Pas sortir par là, on veut pas m'aider.
So here, what you've been watching and what you're seeing on this screen here is emergency exit during the winter. They expected that Denis would be able to shovel the snow. What this picture does also tell you is he took the picture himself with his cell phone and his portable. And there's a 12 foot difference of leveling, and there's no railing guard on the balcony. So whenever he came out from the house, he would be if he wouldn't be careful during the winter, he would make that drop. and nobody to pick him up. And yeah, they said he was autonomous to shovel the snow. So that's the emergency exit in the winter. Very useful. This next slide here is also a movie. You're gonna hear a comment about Denny. He's not really happy, but before we get it started, I'll tell you that these are the result of $100,000 of investment from CSST on his house for what they call adaptation to his condition. And this is less than 6 months after the job was done. So these are the results. So enjoy.
Ici, on a du ciment qui se désagrège. Regardez le beau ciment. Tout le ciment se désagrège de l'ascenseur. On patauge dans l'eau. Regardez, toute la cochonnerie. Toutes les cochonneries. Regardons où est le papier. J'ai mon auto. L'espace que j'ai pour débarquer mes commissions. Regardez la marche.
The emergency exit is down this balcony here.
Regarde la belle marche.
12 foot.
Faut que je passe là tous les fois avec mon petit sac à vidange. Pour venir porter les commissions ou tout ce que tu veux. Après ça, ici, on a une des gouttières. Ils l'ont vraiment pas mis à la bonne place. Toute l'eau coule dans le campo. Fun. Après ça, ici, t'as mon 4 roues. Après ça, t'as toutes les cochonneries que je sais pas où les serrer. Parce qu'on n'a pas d'entrepôt pour rien serrer. Garder la neige. On serait pas supposé de pelleter dans un carport. Regardez la merde. Le beau 4 roues qui m'ont payé, qui veulent pas payer, qui veulent pas envoyer faire réparer. C'est pas à moi de payer ces frais-là. J'aurais quadriporteur, j'aurais pas à payer ça. C'est à eux autres d'entretenir cette machine-là. Regardez dans la merde que je suis. Dans vraie crise de grosse merde, pas capable de bouger, pas capable de rien faire. Bac à vidange et dans les jambes. Tout est dans les jambes. On veut pas m'aider. Hein, Gagnon? À cause de toi, Daniel, que la société va mal.
Alright, so he's saying, he's swearing and cursing, I won't translate, but you notice here how much of a burden that is. That's supposed to be under a carport, so how is there snow under a carport? Why do you put a gutter that spreads water directly on cement? That's beyond me. But what's not beyond me, because I've studied so much thing, one time I started studying physical science, and one of the things that you study in there is the dynamic of fluid, or the law of fluid. And water has that tendency to always find the lowest point possible and just accumulates there until it fills that space, and then it keeps on going. So you've noticed the North Republic, which was leaning to support the wall, he was standing by the elevator. Then he was also showing you the outside door of the same elevator on the same level, but there was a basement in this home, and this is the basement of the elevator. So one day I arrived there, he called me over the phone and said, "There's water in the elevator." Well, here's the result. And I went there and I filmed with this very camera that you see there, and this is the result, lowest point of the house. And this is me being stupid. Putting my feet directly in the water.
Hey, you could have been electrocuted.
Yes.
Hey, c'est vraiment dégueulasse.
On peut constater qu'il y a de l'eau à grandeur. Il y a au moins 1 centimètre d'eau à grandeur. Direct d'un fil. C'est du fil de quoi, ça?
220?
220, c'est sûr. 240 volts. En tout cas, c'est écrit là. Ah ouais, 240, c'est encore pire. Je sais pas si la caméra va le pogner. Ouais, 240 volts. Il y a même un cadenas, tout ça. What's that?
They want to kill him.
They wanted
Yeah.
to kill him. They want him dead to this day today. You see how the condition that he's in. Alright, so this picture was provided by Angel not so long ago. Fortunately, we have Denis with us, so you can check it for yourself. Is it reasonable that he's sitting on a plywood, on a wheelchair? The judgment result. We'll talk about Denis, who has received the equivalent in letter of change of $250,000. They basically agreed to the judgment in the end. They've accepted all 23 points to be paid to him. Unfortunately, it cannot be done until Denis gets a house. We'll talk about the house in a later moment, briefly after it. But without that key factor in his life, nothing else makes sense. He still have the ATV that you saw, but he has no vehicle adapted to his condition, no nothing else, especially no wheelchair. But less than 3 months after the grand jury, 2 months to be precise, the CSST closed once and for good. The regime was going on 42 years and we made it close. Of course, that didn't prevent them from being idiots, so they opened it back on the following day under a new tag called signent. It was also brought back into the Ministry of Labor because by that point we found out they were a totally private corporation and they were not part of the government in any way, shape or form, even though they were pretending to be part of the government. But by bringing it back to the Ministry of Labor, didn't change anything because there's no Ministry of Labor in Quebec. It's a private corporation in itself. But we did have the CEO of CSST resign under with lying, under false pretext. Oh, my family is sick or whatever family reason. We also have the Ministry of Labor, which was no ministry of anything. He resigned under a fake pretext as well. His name was Sam Ahmad, I told you that earlier. But the beauty of the thing is the entire case is backed up and confirmed by a previous judgment. Some of you may know of it, Eldridge versus British Columbia. So it was pretty much all prosecutor from Canada, with the exception of Quebec, going through this judgment, and Mr. Eldridge has won his case all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada, crushing every other court in the process. And we've also noticed extra damage, especially to Denis' property, for an extra $100,000. So we did get some result, and some of them being the, I'll stay polite, the clowns at the CSST, trying to get better condition from the fake government. So one day we arrived there for, I don't remember what reason, maybe Denis does recall, but this is what we got. Okay, we arrived there. Anybody can figure what this is?
The CCC was on strike.
CSST was on strike, so they were demanding from the fake government better condition, better treatment, and when I see how they treat their own case, how can they go and cry for better condition when they're poorly treating the case they have to manage? And you'll notice another thing on this picture, on the previous picture, is that when we arrived there, they were all gathered by the entrance, and when we got there, they were all spreading like bugs. Like if I was an exterminator or of some kind. That was the previous summer, 1 year before the grand jury. Denny and I had nothing better to do. We spent 11 days of our lives in front of the CSST. So these are the pictures that you can see. I'll flip my pages here at the same time so I follow. But yeah, you get... So we were there for the longest time, and on the 11th day they were so tired of us that they sent the dog watch, or the cops, some people will call them, to beat us up and to run us out. On this picture it's not really clear, but this sign here says day 7. So we were right there at 8 in the morning before they arrived, and we would, and I remember most of you, I said protest don't really matter, but the word is a little bit different in French. We would be there to protest against a specific decision that they've made back then. We returned to them a check of $25,000 because that's the amount that they put on his house, $100,000 in total, and the last check of $25,000, I told to Denis, you keep that check. And you watch them, they're gonna be doing fraud. And that's exactly what they've done. They've paid the general contractor, even though we have already noticed by that point that the work done on his own was totally unacceptable. Alright, this is to prove to you where the location we were, which is the same building as the film you saw a moment ago. So we were in the corner of Route 175 and Highway number 73 in Quebec City, or near downtown Quebec City. This picture I've had here, this is the most loyal companion I've ever seen in my life, even though he's not human. He would follow Denis everywhere. He's went everywhere with us. He's endured torture and all sorts of abuse because of CSST. We should not have ever done everything that we've done. He was there at the grand jury. He's Denis' life companion, and he would die for Denis. So much so that when you saw the previous picture where we were in protest, when they sent the cop to arrest Denis and they handcuffed him to his wheelchair, they were ready to shoot at the dog. And they said to him, you better not give any comment to or order to your dog to attack. This is a helper's dog. It's not an attack dog or a watch dog. He's loyal. He's except for other dog because he's jealous, but that's something else, right? But he wouldn't never hurt even a fly. So cheers to Oz, the most loyal companion I've ever seen. Here is very saddening. We're gonna throw at you a series of video. I'm gonna comment them after, except for this one, I'll comment it before. This is what you get when you live in Quebec. If you doubt that Quebec is a fascist state, this will prove the opposite. You have only one right in Quebec, is to die and shut your mouth in between your birth and death. And this is how you are being treated on a daily basis. This day is very saddening. It's when Denis got his house stolen, and you're about to see it.
Six.
balancier, c'était là, constaté. Dès que l'ambulance est là, les mêmes visites. Il n'y a plus de chien. Oui, il y a son chien Hyde. Un chien Hyde. Il n'y a plus rien dans la maison. Il n'y a même pas de petite cuillère.
Ouais, monsieur. On va besoin de s'identifier.
De m'identifier? Pourquoi? Je suis sur un terrain privé.
C'est une intervention policière, on a besoin de s'identifier.
Mais je peux...
Vous avez permis de conduire sur vous une pièce d'identité?
Non, j'ai aucune pièce d'identité sur moi.
Votre nom, c'est quoi?
Je pense pas que je suis tenu de te dire mon nom.
Ouais, vous êtes tenu de dire votre nom. Votre nom, c'est quoi?
Je suis sérieusement tenu de te dire mon nom.
Regarde, on va attendre le huissier, puis lui va me donner le droit de vous identifier. C'est bon, ça? Parce qu'on est là en son nom. Nous, on n'a pas d'affaire ici, ça c'est sûr. Mais au nom du huissier, on a d'affaire ici.
Moi, je suis ici juste comme photographe, comme témoin. Là.
Suivez-nous.
All right, so here you will take notice for those of you who speaks French that my friend who's filming in there, you won't see his face, I won't say his name because he doesn't wish to be identified. But he's taken on the cops and he wants his ID. And my friend asked the cops, am I obliged in any way, shape or form to give you my identification? And the cop's so embarrassed with it that he says, we are here in the name of the bailiff and I'm going to ask authorizations from the bailiff to identify you. And if he requires so, we're going to obey his order. We don't have any business here today. So this cop's really much in trouble. It proves to you that you don't need to identify in any way, shape or form in front of a police officer. You don't have to obey their lie because they're a liar. That's all there is. But that's how they treat you still. They work on your fear. My friend has no fear of them, so he gets away with it, no problem. But the bailiff in Quebec, they are also all private. None of the bailiff are public, even though they wear a badge says National State of Quebec, it's a lie. So they have no right over you whatsoever, but they still do things like that. We've warned the bailiff to come in with the ambulance. Instead, he was stubborn, as total... and he came in with the cops. But yeah, we knew better, but that's how they treat you. In the end, after 45 minutes of discussion with them, they finally understood what the problem is. They cannot put their hand on Denny in any way, shape, or form. They work basically on fear. They want you to walk out, but when they can't do that, and I've already at that point stolen Denny's wheelchair, with his blessing, of course. I didn't steal it, on my own. So Denny has no wheelchair. He's just sitting on the ground there. And they cannot touch him in any way, shape, or form, so they ended up coming with the ambulance. We'll play this clip, but before we do that, I want you to take note of the green and pink sticker. They are on strike.
And it's still working.
Take note on this shot here, you see the door, the emergency door is right there below this balcony. You can't even see the top of the door from the balcony. We're gonna skip directly to part 2. Notice how many squad car there is. There's 2 more also. They came in with 6 police officers, or anyway, 6 fascist paramilitary. And believe me, I'm not expressing my mind. Alright, so this is how you get treated when you are in your right and you are in your home and they destroy it and they pay for it and they're not responsible for anything. What you're about to see is 5 days later, because they brought him to the hospital after the sequence that you saw there. And this is what you get for being in an hospital in Quebec. And in this one, I will not restrain from swearing because it's recorded. It is in French. I hope you enjoy Garde the World.
Ils sont bien mieux de pas essayer ça. Petite carte de merde.
Tu l'as le manteau? Il a son manteau. S'en va-tu? Ouais, mais moi je veux pas risquer de tourner ma cam. Il voulait que j'efface ce que j'ai dessus. Là.
Non, tu les envoies chier. C'est qui, eux autres? C'est quoi qu'on fait? Ben là, on a un choix entre deux enfants. Enfin là, tu dois rendre la responsabilité des corrections criminelles qui sont là. Tu prends toute la responsabilité. Lambert en temps d'activité, donc à moyen pour l'emploi d'hier, tu restes pas ici. Quand tu vas aller c'est super bon dans votre faire encore. Regarde, je suis bien allé, j'ai pas de charge, je peux pas te prendre en responsabilité. T'as pas de maison, ça c'est la vie. Je peux rien avoir avec ça. Tu viens, je peux pas quelque chose.
Ils l'ont appelé.
Pas trop, tu t'arrêtes tout le temps. Parce que tu fais pas d'or, non? Ouais, tu t'arrêtes. Non, c'est toi qui décide. C'est moi qui décide. Toi, tu parles avec tes assignaiseries, tu crées ton camp voir, t'as rien à nous dire, va te faire foutre, fasciste. Le gars, il est dans la rue, tu portes assistance à personne en danger, t'es un hôpital, oui, tu te feras pendre pour tes crimes, pourriture. C'est assez clair? Regarde, il est dans la rue, qu'est-ce que tu fais? Hein? Trouve-toi dans la chaise, là, il y a un crétin comme toi qui prend les mains de niaiseries, ta face enculée, et sa photo. C'est quoi ton nom? Joël Thériault, du soi-disant ministère du Québec, mesdames, messieurs, qui met une personne handicapée à la rue dans votre face. Qui essaie de nous dire quoi faire. Regarde the world, les maîtres du monde. Tu gardes tes photos parce que c'est ça que tu veux faire. T'obéis pas à ce tranquille-là. Si la police arrive, j'espère d'appeler chez vous pour dire que tu renverras pas. Tu vois, on va peut-être t'arrêter moi-même devant tous les témoins qui sont là, que t'es en train de faire ça, les gamins du 25. Ça fait la table de tes enfants. Pense-y comme toi. Parce que c'est eux autres qui sont là. Ils décident à se les épées. Bon, let's go, on va aller faire un tour, on le laisse là. Moi, je peux pas rien faire d'autre que de constater qu'il y a des pourritures fascistes et criminels qui nous disent pas fort.
This sequence, probably one of the hardest time in my life, even though I'm giving shit and I feel good about it, even to this day, to this guy. The reason being it's hard because they were trying to get Denis on my back, to get him in my house, to basically remove him from the hospital. I have no responsibility. He's a grown man. He weighs more than twice my own size. I can't do anything. If his own house was not adapted to his condition, certainly my 3-story house was not adapted to receive him in any way, shape, or form. There are several steps to climb into my house. You can't access anything. I had no adapted washroom or anything. But they wanted me to take responsibility of him. They kicked him out of the hospital, and suddenly I'm responsible. So they start kicking half the population of the hospital out. I'm responsible? No. I went there to visit my friend, and I see him. He's crying on the front porch of the hospital. I couldn't believe it. And this guy is basically ordering me to get the hell out of here with him. It was implied with it. So I gave him a bunch of shit. He also ordered a few months later my friend to remove his image from his camera. Nobody has to obey Garde the World. They're a bunch of nobody. So you don't have to obey Garde the World now. They're patrolling airport. They don't have any right to go through your belonging. and they still do it, and they pretend they even have name tag Canada on it. This is a total abuse. These people are working for a corporation for which its social headquarters is located in Qatar, and they belong to the Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. So yes, Quebec has pulled a coup d'etat on Canada. They're now patrolling the airport, they're guarding the parliament, they're guarding the Supreme Court, but they have absolutely no right. These people should be federal employee and of course answering to the people, yet they are once again a foreign corporation. So speaking of the Supreme Court, this picture is glorious. This is Denis at the Supreme Court procedure. This picture was provided and taken by Angèle, hereby present. So thank you for documenting the proof. So yeah, we live in a sad world where Garda World, a fascist corporation, think they're the master, and yet they kick people out of the hospital, and they have no heart because this guy has no leg, he has nowhere to go, he has no house, and yeah, it's normal. So back to commenting what happened before I skipped to the second case. I was formally criminally charged for death threat for what you just heard, the recording on the previous sequence. When I say to him that he should be hanged for his own crime, I'm not responsible. He's really acting criminally. This is criminal negligence. And treason and a bunch of other stuff. By that date you saw there, then he was not yet king. It happened before, so treason is much likely not to be a thing, but yet still criminal negligence. But the thing is, I plead guilty at the court of Mont-Laurier for that in exchange for an unconditional absolution, which means basically it is in the best people's interest that you don't get a criminal record for anything. And that was my last day in Quebec. We had a plan B with Denis. We bought an RV, and this is how I got back to British Columbia. Beautiful British Columbia. If you, once again, don't believe me, you don't have to. The fact proved that it says on a sign when you get there, best place on earth. So you can check it for yourself if you ever come to the Rockies, and you can always stop by my home, unless you work for Garde du World or the Sortie de Québec. But yeah, I got away with it several times. I was in court possibly 50 times in my life, if not more. That was just for me. I went there probably another 50 times for other people. It was quite a journey, but it's all about the journey. It's not about reaching the goal. Of course, my roots are deeply ingrained into British Columbia. My own father lived there for several decades. I was posted there as a military in 2004. When they ordered me back to Quebec in 2008, I was crying. There's nothing I haven't done. I yelled. I wasn't even ready to go to military jail until I found out that the jail was around Edmonton. So I said, fuck that. I'm sorry for the language. So I said that. And yeah, they ordered me back to Quebec. I was really disappointed, but because I was a good military, a good sailor, I've obeyed the order, but I've obeyed backward. But fortunately, the outcome of this thing, by me going back to Quebec, this is how I ended up meeting Denis 2 years later. In 2010 was the first encounter. So I'm counting now on my 9th year of friendship with that guy who has provided me with the tool, and of course I've set forward a remedy for the future because of his suffering. Like I said earlier, now we're going to get into Angèle's case. She has no idea what's ahead. She's provided the picture that we see here and the text, so I'm going to invite Angèle to take this part, follow the slide, and talk about her own story. When we did the convention in Lloydminster the other day, she wasn't here, so I did that part, but she did write, and so she can comment. So please, Angèle, I would like to invite you to speak about your case.
And then you can talk, if you like.
Everything's written.
Yeah.
It's easy.
I'll read it, and then you can add.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So I invite you to step here because we cannot go with the microphone in front of Angèle. Je vous invite à venir aussi. On peut pas se promener avec le microphone devant les haut-parleurs.
So you'll do the slides?
Yes.
So let's push it. So Angèle and her family lived on native land, and they produced artisan products made from the maple supply that their land provided. They wanted to sell their homemade products independent from the Syrup Federation. And in this picture you can see,
Well, you can see that my husband is there with his bucket. We are preparing to. I'm trying to make a short story. We had trouble with the neighbor. The neighbor where we live, the neighbor, when he got to his retirement, he came to our place and he said, "You don't want to settle with the federation. You're gonna have to live with. You're gonna have to for 20 years of trouble. You don't want to settle with the federation." So I said, "What is he talking about? Why does he come here to tell me about the Federation of Maple Syrup?" Because the Federation probably said that Angel and Regent are your neighbor, and we had a rights of way on his land, so he decided to stop us from going to the. He did everything to stop us from going to the sugar shack, because the Federation was behind him to tell him that we had to obey to him. So we had spent that week of the March 2013, we had spent 2 days in court for the rights of way with the neighbor, 2 days. And then on Thursday night, we found out that the big 2,000 liters back from to get the maple sap, they were full of clear water. There was really the beginning of the maple sugar time. And then the Friday, March 18, on the Journée Internationale des Femmes, I was getting ready because my husband had started to boil the water already, and then I was at home getting ready to go to the sugar shack, because we were going to be there for about a month. When I got to the shack, I didn't see him, and I didn't see his snowmobile. I said, and our cousin was there, and he said, "Did you see the cops?" I said, "What cops?" There were 3 cars of police that came to the shack to bring my husband to jail, because the week before the neighbor has jumped himself in front of the snowmobile, the big snow blower behind the tractor. My husband was opening the driveway, and he jumped right in front of the blower. So he made a criminal case to the police. So the police came right on the first day that we were getting the maple season started. Funny thing happened. So when I get there, there was no police, and he said the 3 cars of police came to bring him to jail. So I called a friend who is a lawyer, and he said it was a Friday, and it was about 11 in the morning. And he said, if you want to have your husband back, you have to go to the Palais of Injustice and pay $500 to get him out. So I tried to find $500, and when I got to the Palais of Injustice, it was 3:30, I think, because at 4 o'clock they would have brought it to Trois-Rivières for about a week. So forget about the season of maple syrup, okay? So when I got the $500 in my hand, I didn't go home to change. I went to the Palais of Injustice with my boots, my wood boots, and my square jacket, and my hole in my tuck, and I went right there to get him out, because otherwise, if he suppose I couldn't go to the Palais of Injustice to pay the $500, they would have brought him in jail in Trois-Rivières. So we know that the maple season is very short, and the first week is usually the best week. So if he's not there, we cannot produce any maple syrup. That's a scam from the Federation. The Federation, they said, you're gonna give us your maple syrup and you're not about to get paid. So if you don't want to apply with this, we're gonna seize your land. We're gonna seize your maple syrup, and that's what they wanted, that's what they tried to do. And that's what happened. And when you see this is not smoke. This is the steam from the boil.
So it's boiling right now.
It's
taking
boiling.
you
Yeah,
away.
it was started. Anyway, it was starting. Mm-hmm.
All right, Maureen,
Next slide.
we're on.
So production of maple syrup was an ancestral inheritance for Angèle and her family. The artisan hobby was established long before the establishment of the Syrup Federation. They claimed freedom of association from the Quebec Federation of Maple Syrup Producers, which was denied by all the courts. All the courts from civil to appeal court, 30 to 35 judgments against them, all with the same conclusion: doomed to failure, no chance of success.
Yeah, because first when I went to the grand jury, I was talking about two laws. The laws that the Federation has. The Federation of Maple Syrup has the obligation to defend its members, and at the same time they have the power to sue them. So those two laws, they cancel each other, because you cannot defend and prosecute at the same time, right? So I was wondering why, and I always ask them, why do they prosecute us if they have the obligation to defend us? But they never wanted to answer me. The courts, the judges, they always said this is a doomed failure doomed to failure, and we lost every case, and yeah, that's what they did.
So Angèle was at risk of losing all of her ancestral land to the Federation through a seizure process between 2005 and 2016. She filed a procedure to take her case to the Supreme Court in 2016. She was advised by the registry to file an injunction to delay the seizure process and protect her lands. She did, and after 30 days had passed, none of the defendants had objected to her injunction, therefore resulting in a default judgment from the Supreme Court, stamped and filed by the Registrar of the Supreme Court. Stéphane Rissette was the, what do you call him? Registrar. The Federation continued to harass Angèle with bogus claims and fines, each one resulting in a court appearance. She bravely tore up the 3 recent judgments in front of the Quebec Appeals Court and told them that if Freedom Association had been respected, she would not be here today. Every time she had to go to court, it was at least $350 for each appearance. Angèle asked the appeals court to provide her with a judgment, which they did. She then had to apply to the Supreme Court for a second time.
Parlez de la cour d'appel, s'il vous plaît. Quand on a juste
Yes, there was a fine from the Federation of $108,000, and the last time we received that judgment, I said to myself, I have to apply, otherwise I will lose by default, and they would freeze our account, and they would
feed themselves.
Feed themselves with this. So I said I have to go to. So I applied to the appeal court in Quebec, and it cost me $340 just to apply there. And then I had to make the procedure and everything and send it to the
bailiff.
The bailiff in Quebec City. And when because to send my procedures at the Supreme Court, I needed a judgment from the appeal court. So I didn't care if it was going to be on our side. I knew it was not going in our favor. So we went to the appeal court in Quebec, and and Jean-François and Denis were with us. There were 4 of us. And usually this, because it was not the first time I went to the appeal court, and the judges were familiar to me, and they recognized me also. They said, you're not supposed to talk, but I said I had the freedom of expression, I'm gonna talk. Okay, go ahead. So I told them about the 1968 coup d'etat, and I told them that they were traitors, and I read them what it says on the 1951 judgment from the Supreme Court, and I said that this is not valid, and I tore apart 3 judgments, 2 from the civil procedures with the neighbor, and 1 from the federation, and there was for about $150,000 of fines in there, and I threw them up and I said, you are traitors, you have to quit the boat, you're done. And she said, we're going to not retreat, but we're going to almost retreat.
So retreat.
We're going to retrieve. We see that you're going to retrieve you too. I said, yeah, I don't have to talk to you. You're not valid. So the security guy, he said, okay, get out of there. So when we get out in the hallway, there were about 7 cops there, and he said, you go away, go away. I say, wait a minute, I'm going to wait for the king first. But they were really afraid of us. We're just telling the truth. And I'm not arguing with them. I just told them that you are traitors, you don't have any power, and you have to get out of here.
So that's exactly, I'm gonna add on to this one. So that's exactly what they've done. When she told them that they were a traitor, they stepped up, they did a little bowing before her, and they went into the back room. So yeah, that's the way you treat court. Don't take from them.
And I said, I'm going back home, and when I get home, I want to have the judgment on my computer. It was there for the second time, because the year before, that was the same thing. I needed those 2 appeal court judgments to go to the Supreme Court, and I had them. So.
Next slide, please.
It was through this lengthy court process that they discovered that the Quebec Federation of Maple Syrup Producers was in a conflict of interest. On September 12, 1990, the National Assembly granted the Quebec Federation of Maple Syrup Producers the regulatory power, the power to enforce the Marketing Act and Chapter M35, which is the power to prosecute. On November 15, 2011, the judgment of Carol Julien is as follows. The Federation acts in this case not as a union but as a marketing agency, is responsible for exercising powers provided by the law. So this body cannot have the obligation to defend its members and the power to prosecute them at the same time. And the Minister of Justice and the Attorney General, they all knew and did not correct this situation. We were betrayed and kept in ignorance to better control us.
Yeah, but we didn't know. We knew that there was some. They could not defend and prosecute at the same time, but we didn't know what to do. But after the grand jury, when I watched the videos a couple of months later, after September, I noticed that Mr. Lebrun said what happened back in 1968, and when he said that there was a coup d'etat and they were formed irregularly from the 1968, I said to myself, wait a minute, they don't have any power, they do what they want. Like I said at the appeal court, now we're going to make laws like we want. We're going to make laws that cancel each other, and we're going to make laws that we won't even respect within our organizations. So they do what they want. They do laws like they shit. Sorry. They make laws like they want, and their laws are not valid because there is no constitution, there is no legislative council. Because back in 1968 they got rid of the legislative council, and these people are there to tell the truth. And if there is no council, there is no legislative council, they cannot tell you if the laws are constitutional. So there is no council, legislative council, so they make laws that they want. And their laws are not valid, so we just found out that everything that they've done, they're not valid. So they accused us, they persecute us, they sent my husband in jail for two or three times. They did everything to stop us from working on our land, on our maples, our patrimoine. And they had no power. So I'm not gonna let it go like this. I'm not gonna let it go like this.
Next slide is what happened. Remember this? What's this? Just don't put the microphone in front. Thank you. Ça, c'est la Cour suprême.
Oh, no, it was a Friday afternoon, and Stéphane Racette, the registrar from the Supreme Court, called me twice to tell me that I had a file number, and that I just had to pay $75 to apply at the Supreme Court. Instead of appeal court, it's $350. So it was on a Friday afternoon. This guy was really smart because I think he understood. Because the first time we went there, I was crying and I said, they're gonna steal our land. He said, make an injunction. That's what I did, and nobody answered. So I didn't know. I don't play chess, but I think I will be very good at it.
Yeah, Angèle, she's looking at me. The injunction thing. I've also went through the procedure of the Supreme Court, and we're really well into this process. And I also told her to write an injunction to stop the prevention of crime, and then she did. And we went back to the Supreme Court several times. I'm gonna take the mic for this part. So much so that at the end of the Supreme Court they didn't want to hear anything from me. They sent the RCMP, their biggest badass RCMP, tried to prevent me to going for the Supreme Court. Fortunately for me and unfortunately for them, I'm more intelligent than that, so I had my minion called Denis Paiement, which was not prevented to go at the Supreme Court. They were really afraid that I would arrest them right there. So he went up with his wheelchair and his assistant, because they provided him with the assistance of the Supreme Court through the elevator and everything. He got the document stamped like a champion. We did receive that injunction. It is valid to this day for any of you to use, not just Angèle or Denis or myself. We made sure that our case at that point was constitutional case, based on freedom of association, like Angèle told you. If they don't respect freedom of association or peaceful assembly, exactly what we're doing today, we are doomed. We have no more freedom. Freedom of speech without freedom of assembly is completely useless. I can yell all I want in my living room, right? No one will listen. That's why we get all of these. So we're fighting now for freedom. There's nothing else as goal in our book than freedom. And we hope that we can extend all these freedom from you. This is why you are here, based on your free will and goodwill, as of course, under your own dollar. You came in this place. Most of you, except for the people who organized, didn't have anything to pay but your gas and food to be here. So the door was open. Well, the way you see it, you can still see, you know. So you're free to leave. Freedom is very much at the core of what we're doing. So we're gonna finish with Angèle's case. On the next slide here, I'm gonna keep on reading, Maureen, it's okay. So Angèle at the Supreme Court identified all nine judges of the Supreme Court of Canada associated to her previous judgments. So they were seen before in her case, since she went to court so many times, and they have just a limited amount of fake judge. As being in conflict of interest with their association to the Federation of Maple Syrup beet producer, cost only $75, so twice, to appeal at the Supreme Court of Canada, which is much more cheaper in common law than it is in Quebec. Angèle found a buyer, and that was a miracle. She said to you she was crying and everything. One point, Angèle and Régent, they came to my place where I used to live, and they didn't know what to do and everything, and they were ready to throw the towel and do all sorts of stuff to fight for their land.
So I said to them, why don't you just put a sign for sale in front of it? Fortunately for them, 2 weeks later, she called me back. She said, we sold and we're moving to New Brunswick. So that probably saved their life, and much more than just their life. All their work times saving and living. Now they can enjoy retirement with freedom of association, which is much better in my view. I am sad that they got their land stolen, because Régent, which is right there, is an absolute magnificent gardener. I went there once or twice. I saw the place. It was pristine. It was awesome place, awesome house. But in the end, it's better to walk away from a house and a land than to lose your life and utmost freedom. Like she said, they took Régent to jail 3 or 4 times. It was getting insane. The neighbor was all over them. It was war. So if you want to preserve something, you need to sign peace. In their case, was done in the form of selling the land. So miracles do happen in a fast pace when you put your heart and trust and mind into it, just like you saw in Denis' case, like the ATV that was given to him. So 2 weeks after, or let's say roughly between 2 and 4 months, to put it on safe side, Chief Judge Beverly McLaughlin quit her job at the Supreme Court after receiving Angèle's injunction procedure. The reason for resignation is still not clear to this day. We suspect it's related to this constitutional case. Of course, they always give the same thing. Oh, my family is getting old, or whatever. They invent it's never related. So like the 19 or 20 liberal that we kicked out, the many people who've resigned before, we are leaving a trail of resignation wherever we go. There's many chief of police for the fascist Quebec, Sûreté du Québec, who have resigned following our cases, and many more that we probably don't know about. Tammy, how long we still have? 5 minutes? All right, so from that day on, this is Angèle doing it. All procedure that are received that are sent back to them systematically from any other court as well, with the mention not valid, coup d'etat 1968. She has not heard from them in quite a long time. This includes the Federation attempt to initiate a coup before the Queen's Bench in New Brunswick. So yeah, they try following her with Quebec judgment into New Brunswick. They went through the Queen's Bench there, and I told to her, why don't you send your package? And by that time, she's getting smarter and smarter, so the package is already ready. So she put the stamps onto it and sent it there. 2 weeks later, the Queen's Bench called her, we're not going to proceed this thing, it's abuse, it's valid in Quebec maybe, but it's not valid in New Brunswick. But that's where they stand now. If you don't stand your ground, Quebec is going to come after you wherever you live. I'm going to make this before you take a short break for a technical reason. But when I did sign my contract to buy a car in British Columbia, and I read the small print and everything, they say this contract is signed under the Quebec Civil Code. I live in British Columbia. How do you think you're going to enforce this bull? Beep, 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 beep. So this is where we stand today. Quebec did a coup d'etat against Canada, was done in several steps, started in 1931, continued in 1968, and still ongoing to this day. The Bar Association is very much guilty of pretty much everything, but like I said to you in a private matter before we got here, they work for Power Corporation. Power Corporation works for Rockefeller. Rockefeller works for the International Bankers Cartel. So we're going to take a short break here. We're still... Yeah, I'm gonna get the icing on the cake when we get back in 10 minutes. Where the default judgment is very important. It did work for us at the Supreme Court and is very much valid to this day. So thank you very much. 10-15 minutes, and we'll be back at it.
Good job, Anna.
Don't mess with her.
You still have 5 minutes.
Don't make with
I'll
the
talk
best.
to you.
All right, so following the grand jury, the grand jury was presented as its own entity, as a person, some would say. To the Supreme Court, and there 5 humans presented their case, including myself as a human under my full name. But the grand jury was there, and we received the default judgment. We didn't quite receive it. We've organized stuff, so it happened this way. It is in the procedure of every common law court to be able to proceed in default judgment. So what is a default judgment in the end? A default judgment is a ruling granted by a court or judge. By the way, the Supreme Court Registrar is a judge of peace, so he has that power to do that. There's no need for a hearing. Default judgment arise in circumstance whereby one party to a suit has failed to perform a court order action. In this case, was answering to the appeal, right? And subsequently, that failure has not only prevented the issue from being presented before the court, but also in the court settling the legal dispute in the favor. Sorry, am I skipping a line here? In favor of the compliant party. For example, when a defendant is summoned to appear before the court in a case brought by a plaintiff, we were the plaintiff, by the way, but fails to respond to the court's legal order, the judge can rule for a default judgment, in our case, the registrar, and thereby decide the case in the plaintiff's favor. The defendant, though not present before the court, is obligated to abide by the court's ruling for default judgment and subject to any and all punishment requested by the court. Cornell Law School. And if you know anything about court, the judge, they normally, especially in the case of default judgment, they don't get to write the judgment. The party writes the judgment. And then the judge, they rule if it's what they want as a judgment. They usually don't override what the prosecutor do. They go by the advice. And so that's how it works, because what we brought before the Supreme Court is a civilian case, right? There's nothing about criminal law, it was all civilian. So it did work. So here on the next slide, you get the default judgment. And I've got it here for those who wants to see it. It's only 4-page thick for 6 plaintiffs in total. So it's really, really, really short. It's really clear as well. So I can talk a little bit about it because we're probably going to talk very fast about the next 2 slides. And so in our default judgment, the prosecutor and all people presented as plaintiff on the judgment, we obtained the power to shut and turn out any corporation or alike that is pretending to be the government when they're not. And in the case of Canada right now, everything is a private corporation. There's absolutely nothing public. You're a fool if you believe that. Well, you're wrong, because the facts are for us. We're going to show you the evidence a little later this afternoon when we come back from break. But in other words, the power of Canada is now in the hand of 6 people, 3 of them which are in front of you now, and the grand jury. Yes, I have earned the power to shut any corporation that pretends to be government when it's not true, on my own pace. So this is why we've kept on the grand jury website a list of criminal organizations. This can be expanded, in fact, to every and all corporation in Canada, even the mom and pop hot dog shop. If they pretend to be the government in any way, shape, or form, we should simply shut them down, because their business license was provided to them by an illegal structure. Doesn't mean that they become legal on their own. So yeah, we are there at this point. This judgment is now more than 2 years old. The grand jury's judgment is reaching its 5th anniversary. Nothing was contested by anyone. And they had plenty of time, plenty of challenge. We've informed them at every level. I don't even know how much Angela spent on bailiff to inform them. I don't even know how much Denis has spent on bailiff to inform them. And I've long lost the count of my own pocket money that I've put into it to inform everyone about this situation. Not just the criminal corporation, but people like you as well. I've traveled throughout this country, having these types of talk that we're having today, maybe not so much sophisticated as this, because this I built with Maureen recently, but I made sure that everyone know who I am, what my powers are, and it's the same for Angèle or Denis, or Régent for that matter, because she represents Régent just like the way I represent Denis. So yeah, We're not here merely to expose the problem, because otherwise you wouldn't be here. I think you all know there's a problem. We're here to provide you with a remedy, and I hope you'll like it, because the RCMP on this slide here, they really don't like it. Among one of the procedure that we've done, I've sent an order to the RCMP, among other, to stand down on everything. They can still patrol the streets to arrest a crook, that's not a problem, but when it comes to what we're doing, exposing the problem and claiming our freedom of association, especially in common law, they got to stay away. Otherwise, they're going to be arrested by me because they pretend they are the government. But in the case of the military, they are the RCMP, sorry, they are absolutely not the government. They're not even the police. They are paramilitary. They are militia. And yet they abuse the title of police. So they're not agent of peace. They are on the same regime as I am, as a retired military. There's no difference. It's one of them. I'm one of them. I'm a military. I'm no agent of peace. I'm an agent of war. I'm not here to preserve life. I'm here to kill. That was my duty. And I'm not, when I'm military, right? I'm not here today to do these things. But when I'm serving, I am not a peace agent. So they are not peace agent. They are agent of war. So don't be fooled. So the judgment was delivered to the CSST's office in December 2015. Like I said earlier, during the same month, it was also delivered to the Ministry of Labor, the Quebec Bar Association, Utmost Criminal. It was sent to the Quebec maple syrup producer. I'll refrain from saying what I think of them. It was also sent to most of the corporation at that point in 2015 that were identified as criminal organization. Not all of them, it came subsequently. But on December 18, 2018, which is a significant date, December 18 for us, I'll skip over that, but it was delivered by somebody that I don't know, that I don't have anything to do with. He just took the judgment from the grand jury and from the Supreme Court, he printed them out, and he went to the RCMP's headquarters in Ottawa, and he dumped it on his desk, on their desk. In this case, it was right outside. So here's the photographic evidence that this was done. They've replied to us a whole bunch of beep. All right, I'll read you the file, I'll read you the next slide here, but also tell you the detail about it. So the triage group of that's word from the RCMP, these are excerpts from their letter, right? The triage group of the National Division of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police received your document that you deposited at our headquarters in Ottawa. After reviewing the information you provide, it was determined that it did not meet the threshold to initiate a criminal investigation under the mandate of the National Division. Of course, I sent them a stand-down order, so it's out of their jurisdiction. But they do say this line here: the mandate of the National Division is to conduct an investigation into cases that undermine Canada's political, economical, and social integrity, including but not limited to national and international corruption, war crime, and crime against the human race. As noted above, you can contact a legal representative, in other words, a corrupted and criminal lawyer, and that's not without a reason why they're called that way, to help you with your civil complaint. And they've also, and we didn't put it in there, but they said that they didn't have the power to arrest Justin Trudeau because he was not guilty of anything. Well, this is misleading, because we never brought our case against the standing government per se. Not even in Quebec when we did the grand jury, we didn't accuse the National Assembly, we didn't accuse the House of Commons. Never ever we went into that, and they said we can't arrest Justin Trudeau for treason. I replied to them within a letter that I have the secret of, that they were misleading the case and that they were now suspicious organization to be arrested if they kept on lying to us. We really had a case against the CSST and the Quebec maple syrup producer. This was civilian case. They don't have anything to do with criminal in this matter, but they did have to obey to the warrant of arrest that were issued for the 110 criminal charge that you saw earlier. This was prosecuted by me and Angèle alone. She was the judge, I was the prosecutor, because those are the power that we got from the people. The people ordered us at the grand jury to lead a criminal investigation, to prosecute it, so we did, and we did sentencing. But never, ever, the name of Justin Trudeau was on the list. And so they were misleading us in that case. But on the other hand, they were respecting the order to stand down, not to get involved. So this is why I didn't arrest the RCMP yet. No reason. They are obeying the first order. Remember what I just said was brought over by someone I have no link with, no clue who he is in real life, never met him, never had a cup of coffee with him. He just took the grand jury the warrant of arrest and went on his own pace in Ottawa. So I have nothing to do with it. But I was involved in replying to them after the answer because this guy contacted me between the two things. So I hope you have learned from this part one from the grand jury. There would be much more to say about everything that we've done up to this point. I'll spare you from it. I thank you for being here again. We're going to take a lunch break and stop the camera and talk about other things for a while because I've got a headache. What's that? Alright, so I'll see you after the break. We're going to get in part 2, learning from the grand jury process, and this should be also interesting. It should be fairly short, then Maureen's going to take the mic. Thank you very much. No applause, no applause.
Hey, come.
Alright, we're on. So we're learning from the grand jury process. What I just said here is part of it. It is the big part of it, of course, discovering all of these things. Where does that come from? Let me do this little comment because it's in the Constitution. It's not really a comment, but it's my own words. So everything that was valid before the Constitution was repatriated, still valid after. Every power that came with the conquest and with Britain and with the constitution monarchy is still valid to this day. And everything that dates their own constitution, because England doesn't really have a written constitution, it's more traditional and status and fact and act that they've done through the parliament, still valid to this day. Everything, including and foremost the Magna Carta Libertatum from 12,015. That led, of course, to common law. They had enough of tyrant and blood and dictator, so they basically tried their king. Some people will claim it was made under threat and duress. Well, no, the idiot was just robbing from his people, sending them to war after war, taking their produce, conscription and all sorts of stuff like that. He was basically a tyrant, so they stopped him. And they really, yes, they forced him, but by then it's either you're just ending up into jail or you sign the document recognizing you have no power over the people. That where is the term free man comes from. It's recognized in the Magna Carta. So there's 800 years of history of blood, tears, sweat, and all these type of things to stop tyranny. I'm not about to give about such a good tradition. We did suffer, we did cry, we've sweated, we've bleeded, but we're not going to stop. Free people, and I'm no freeman on the land. This is a term they've invented as an insult because we were not obeying their order, but I'm not part of the Freeman Society or in any way, shape, or form. I am a constitutional monarchist, and if you tell me otherwise, that's not an insult. That's just you being idiot. But if you tell me I'm not a constitutional monarchist, then that's an insult to me. So, and you'll have to answer and prove it, because I am. I sleep with the Constitution as my pillow, and I use this flag as a sheet to cover me. So, let's get into it. So many significant documents are available to help us understand the history of Canada. If in doubt about the authenticity of the validity of the Magna Carta and the Bill of Rights, as the Toburn judgment has clearly described these as constitutional anyway, which are immune from implied repeal. This means that no legislation subsequently enacted can in any way alter the legal efficiency. Remember, Magna Carta 1215 predate Parliament, and therefore has no authority to abrogate or repeal them. We do agree that when we're reading the Magna Carta, some articles are really, they're still there, they're still valid, but nothing you can do with it. One of the articles saying that it was, I think, King John back then in 1215, he had to give a bunch of hostages. I mean, those hostages, they died 750 years ago. How can we put that together today? So, some articles are still valid, unapplicable today. So it's the same thing. Some article only apply, like the 12 baron thing, only apply in Britain. We don't have 12 baron in Canada, so how can we make that happen? We can't. But we can certainly convene 12 citizens and they can take decision. So here we go. The Act of Union. This is why this is the high point of interest. Why we're here today. This is the 1840 Act of Union that formed the Upper Canada and Lower Canada that merged into United Canada. Didn't form province of Ontario and Quebec per se. Province are nothing in the end. They exist, but it's not like in the United States. Province are not sovereign. It's not province that comes together that creates Canada. It's the other way around. Canada is one sole entity which is split into local jurisdiction, enabling their power. In other words, their children. Children can never emancipate from their parent. They will all, even if they are not under their authority or direct control, they cannot emancipate. I'll still be your mother if you were born as my child. You don't have to call me for everything. You can do your own thing in your own house, but you know, when you're separating the power with me, there are things you can't do. You gotta consult with me. I'm still alive, I'm there, and those are my power. Those are yours. So this is how it works. Act of Union was passed by the British Parliament in July 1840 and proclaimed 10 February 1841 in United Colony of Upper Canada and Lower Canada under one government, creating the Province of Canada, now known as the Country of Canada. In 1864, which leads us to the BNA Act, some people who know nothing will tell you otherwise, but here's the fact. This is a very Canadian document. It was written in 1864, in October to be precise, in a place called Quebec City, for those who know where that is. So the Quebec Resolution, also known as the 72 Resolution, were a group of statements written at the Quebec Conference of 1864, which laid the framework for the Canadian Constitution. Not the other way around. People will say, "Oh, that came from the British Parliament." Yeah, but the original document comes from us. So people, just like today, they convene in a place and they say, "We better write our own constitution before they do something we don't want." Because back then they would travel by ship, take 3 weeks, go across the ocean. How can they govern a country they never saw? So the Canadian people sat in that conference. They got together with 72 resolution, which ended up being the BNA Act. So it's a very Canadian document in the end. So the Constitution that's something that we have learned from the grand jury. The Constitution, the BNA Act, and the Charter of Rights and Freedom from 1982 was never properly signed. They failed on April 17, 1982, then again at Meech Lake in 1987, and then they fell again in Charlottetown in 1992. So just like they say in baseball, 3 strike, get a walk. And it doesn't matter if you throw dust at the referee, if you spit on his shoes, if you give him shit, or if you throw him a hot dog. You're still out. So this is the way it works. This is where we stand today. They're out, and the next batter comes at bat. And it happens to be me. I've got a big bat. How can they repatriate a constitution in 1982 when all the provinces have not agreed to sign? The Constitutional Conference on Canada at Meech Lake and Charlottetown subsequent to 1982 have failed to gain consent by signature, free and voluntary, as required by the Constitution. The whole process failed because the national state of Quebec was already de facto since 1968 at the very least, which was the story Angèle told you earlier. They disbanded the Legislative Council. They could not sign the Constitution. Therefore, the representative from Quebec who showed up there had no legal ground to stand on, because not only did they not abide by the Constitution at that point, but also they were a member of the illegal government. So René Lévesque, for as much as I think of him, he provided this ground today to out them out. To me, he's absolutely no hero. I won't tell you what I think of him. The whole process failed. I know I've read that. The Constitution Act 1982 contains the Canadian Charters of Right and Freedom and other provision, including the procedure for amending the Constitution of Canada. Why are we ready to accept the Charter of Right and Freedom when it comes from the Bar Association? Because in the end, it's a good document. When you read the Constitution, some people who know nothing, who've never read it, will tell you it's a piece of trash. Well, I've read it over and over and over again, and I've read Constitution from other countries. You want to get a republic? Go to the United States, you'll have a failed republic. You want to go get another one? Go to France, they've got 5 failed republic. China is a republic right now. Why don't you go and try it out there? You want to even better? Go to the SSR, see how much good it do. to live in a republic. When you're one of the 330 million who got murdered by the liar in chief. So yeah, I invite people who wants a republic to just take a one-way Air Canada flight to any republic in the world, and they try to do their country there. Because this is our country, this is a constitutional monarchy, it was there before you were born. We got fooled by the Quebec Bar Association and company to believe it was bullshit, but of course some people have grievance and reason to whine about the system that there is now, but they fail to realize it's a corporation system. So your grievance is probably true, but don't blame the constitutional monarchy. You've never had it. It was never properly enacted. It was just an act of theater. So, more about the Constitution that wasn't. I'll let you read that one shortly. I'll take, where's my can somewhere? Or my coffee. So read that one shortly. It's part of the, how we can modify the Constitution subsequently to today. All done? Alright, here's a little historical picture from 1982. You can see that this lady, who, I don't know who she is, but anyway, no comments, but she has her pen on the paper. You can see Mr. Trudeau there, famous Quebec Association lawyer who sold himself to whoever he did. And a bunch of witnesses, all pretending and all lying straight into your face. Why would we know we lie? That they lying? Look at the next picture.
They're all smiling, huh? Mm-hmm. They're all smiling.
All right, this is what she was signing. Anybody know anything about contract law? Anything that is below your signature on a contract is not part of the contract. She only signed the preamble, which is only 5 lines. That doesn't make a country. It says, to us Canadian, salute. Here. The proclamation is here, signed by André Ouellet, and by the way, Jean Chrétien signed there as well, so salute. Greetings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She never signed the Constitution, yet she pretends it's the head of state. The head of state must sign down at the bottom of the document after the Parliament has debated about it. So that's all she signed. This is the official seal and everything. So there was no Constitution in 1982, it was only theater. And you all believed it. But belief are contrary to fact. So you believe all you want, I've got the fact to prove it and back it. So believe all you want, we don't have a Constitution, we don't have a place called Canada, and it's been going on 88 years. Everything was just powder in your eye. So I'm going to read and to show you that even though they've pretend and enact and they've done stupid things, that is still a good document, the Charter of Rights and Freedom. That's why we're going to be ready to accept it. If you read the following 3 articles in this order, you'll understand very easily. Let me read them to you. Start with number 52, primacy of the Constitution of Canada. The Constitution of Canada is the supreme law of Canada. And any law that is inconsistent with the provision of the Constitution is to the extent of the inconsistency of no force or effect. So anything they write that goes against the Constitution, even though they write it and they pretend it's law and they try to shove it down your throat, is in fact invalid when you refer to the Constitution. So like Quebec, for example, has their own local, or I hate to call it provincial because there's no province, they're a criminal corporation, have their own Constitution. It goes all the way against the Constitution of Canada. Nothing is valid. Do I need a trial? No, it's invalid per Constitution. So out you go. Let me read the next one. Here's how you are not subject of the king, but the king is subject to you, and he owes to you. Article 32, application of this charter, of course, is the Charter of Rights and Freedom and the Constitution of Canada. This charter applies A. to the Parliament and Government of Canada in respect of all matter within the authority of Parliament, including all matter related to the Yukon Territory and Northwest Territory, and B. to the legislature of a government of each province. We've done a little mistake about text here, but you can read the original in the Constitution itself. So where does it say that you are subject to the Constitution? Nowhere. It's their rule. Therefore, back in common law, you have only one rule that applies to you. Do no harm. Nothing applies to you when it comes to their law. Nothing. Not even the criminal code. Of course, that doesn't allow you to take a knife and go and murder your neighbor. That's a crime in common law. That does not authorize you to, the Constitution and law don't apply to me. I can go to Canadian Tire and steal a bunch of things. No, that's theft. It's their stuff, their property. You can't do it. So for as long as you do no harm, you act in respect in the other human, there's no law that applies to you. Of course, if you engage in commerce and you have a farm and you have a license, well, you better obey the law of the farm, or the fishery law if you're going fishing under a license. But if you're taking a fishing rod on any given Sunday and you take one fish for yourself and you don't just throw it in the wood, you really eat it at home, the guy from the Park Service, he can't come to you and say, oh, you've been fishing without a license. I'm not in commerce. I'm going to do that because I'm going to feed myself. But of course, if you go with a fishing boat and you grab 1 million salmon, with the intent of selling it onto the market, you're engaged in business. When I go to the grocery, I'm not engaged in commerce. I don't need a driver's license in reality. I'm not engaged in commerce. I'm going there because I want to live. I don't need a permit from you to move to the grocery store, even though everybody believes it. It's not true. And in combination of the next one, and that proves exactly my point, I don't need to deal with ICBC when I want to go to the grocery store. Fundamental freedom, Article 2. Everyone has the following fundamental freedom: freedom of conscience, religion, thought, belief, opinion, expression, including the freedom of press and other media communication, which is what you're doing here by broadcasting on Facebook. Freedom of peaceful assembly, which is exactly what you're doing here, and freedom of association. You want nothing to do with me? Grab the door. Because I've rented this place, I'm the one who paid for it with the help of my friend, not to sing a Beatles song, but anyway. I'm not here for a rock concert, even though I prefer to do that, but anyway. So this is how it works, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not the government who limits your freedom in any way, shape, or form, and even if it's not written in there, I also have the right to enjoy my property, I also have the right to breathe fresh air, to drink clean water, to clean my eyes, to have my heartbeat. What if they say you don't have the right to a heartbeat? Is that not insanity? The rule that they write in there applies only to them. So if a fundamental freedom is overpowered by them, it is illegal. You will always have the freedom of assembly. Even if they call your assembly, oh, it's unlawful, illegal, what do I care about you? You're cops. Am I disturbing traffic? No. I'm sitting here on the sidewalk with 3 of my friends. Who are you? You're disturbing my freedom. I don't want anything to do with you. You're a corporation entity. Get about your way. Move on. You're blocking traffic. Because it applies to them. And that's the main problem. People believe. Oh, I believe the cops as authority. Oh, I got good news for you. It's not true. I was in court so many times and facing the Crown prosecutor, which is no Crown prosecutor, she said, you have to obey the police. I said, look at me. Do I look like a police? Do they pay me? Am I working for them? I don't obey police at all. Screw them. The day they will give me a wage per week with a set amount that I agree for, they give me my duty list, a place to work, a boss to report to, all the tools that I need to be a police, I probably will be a police. Because I wear the uniform in the morning and they provided the boot, they provide the car, the gun, whatever they provide. And the bullshit. Here's one of the most powerful statements that we had, and I told you I went to court several times. I went to court with other people as well. Angèle can vow about it. She talked about it. But I also went to court with Paul Leblond. And one day he was just crying. He knew he would have his house taken by them. And I'll not get into that because we're not expanding on this case, but I'm going to provide with you a little excerpt from it. In the case of Paul Leblond, following the grand jury, a judge in Quebec Superior Court, Jean-François Michaud, not to name it, a criminal, made a startling admission. We asked him, and I was behind the questioning, right? Because Paul was, I said to him what I'm about to say, to prove that the Quebec legislature, otherwise known as the Criminal National Assembly, and the legal system was legitimate, lawful, and constitutional. The judge replied that he was not going to be able to prove it to us and that nobody in the courthouse would be able to prove it. He said to ask the grand jury about the constitutional and lawful issue, which we already did. So he was screwed. I don't ask questions for which I don't have the answer. That's as simple as that. And to prove it, is this the next one?
Yeah, there's a video here.
Alright, so most of you don't speak English, but we have enough French speaker here, and you're gonna see them nod their head if that is true what I just said. Paul, you be one of them, Angèle, Denis, Carl, and Régent can all also, and sorry, Miss Roland here, can also, so play the clip please.
So we're gonna play 1 minute at the beginning and then...
1 minute at the beginning to prove where we were, that it was Paul Leblond's cause. You get the number if you want to check it, and then we're going to skip to another part of it. Have fun.
It is, where's Carl when we need it? You're the only one who hears it. Can you raise the volume on this? No, you must.
No, you have to go out that little square there. There in the far right. No, it was pretty loud.
We're not getting the sound from this one.
That's up there too. What about that keyboard thing that he has there? Is that part of the patchwork? Should we go find Carl?
Okay, maybe we should stop the recording for a minute.
Hold on. We started.
Monsieur Leblanc, c'était...
Donc, on va faire l'audience. On va s'asseoir.
Merci bien.
Donc, dans le dossier de Pierre Desjardins, stage 2, montant et contre-coup, Leblanc demande au procureur et à monsieur de s'identifier, s'il vous plaît.
Alors, Élie Bastarache de l'étude Bastarache Avocat pour la demander. Bastarache.
Monsieur, veuillez vous lever, s'il vous plaît. Vous vous représentez seul? Merci beaucoup.
Gardez ça avec vous, on va tout gérer ça, M. Leblanc, ça sera pas bien là. Je vais juste écouter une Bastarache pour avoir une idée du dossier, puis après ça, je vais vous écouter. Alors, monsieur le juge, il s'agit d'une requête en délaissement forcé pour vente du contour de justice. La requête était présentable le 29 octobre. Quelques jours avant le 29 octobre, j'ai inscrit par défaut parce qu'il n'y avait pas un défaut il n'y avait pas de comptation.
Alright, I'm gonna make a comment here. So you notice that for those who speak French, of course, that the judge asked for the party to identify the lawyer duly identify as a lawyer from a private lawyer firm, and my friend Paul never identified himself. So skip now to 30 minutes. I'm sorry about the sound. I just remember now it is like that. They try to screw us on the sound, so the bass is high because they don't want us to provide you with this information.
Dossier, si vous voulez juste attendre sur une autre chaise, puis on va finaliser la date au procès verbal. Si je peux vous poser une question. Pour ce qui est, puis c'est rien personnel, non, j'imagine. Pour ce qui est de connaître la légalité de la Cour, je peux pas vous conseiller là-dessus. Ben ça, c'est, regardez, je peux pas vous conseiller. Il y a sûrement quelqu'un ici qui... Demandez au tribunal de... Non, je m'adresse à ce tribunal-ci. Moi, je peux pas vous aider là-dessus. Malheureusement, c'est hors de mes fonctions. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un ici dans la... Je ne penserais pas. aujourd'hui, je ne penserais pas. Moi, ce que je vous invite, c'est consulter Internet, consulter un avocat, consulter un juriste. Mais moi, aujourd'hui, c'est pas mon rôle de vous expliquer ça.
Ben, c'est que j'ai eu les explications d'un ex-membre du Congrès qui nous a clairement dit que la législature du Québec est inconstitutionnellement...
continuez à lui parler. Non, mais je ne peux pas vous aider davantage là-dessus.
Oui, mais là, j'aimerais avoir des preuves de ceux qui allèguent la juridiction.
Demandez à cette personne-là.
Non, lui n'est plus membre du bureau.
Regardez, M. Leblanc, moi, je dois gérer, là, j'ai d'autres dossiers. Là.
Ben, oui, je comprends, mais moi, j'ai fait comme ces gens-là, j'ai attendu
tout à fait.
Là, je suis là, je demande des questions.
Je ne peux pas y répondre à ces questions.
Et qui peut m'aider?
Je ne sais pas. Je ne sais pas, demander à cet ancien avocat. Moi, je peux pas.
Mais c'est parce que...
Je n'ai pas réponse à tout, M. Leblanc. Je n'ai pas cette réponse-là. C'est hors de mes connaissances.
Donc, si je viens ici, il y a quelqu'un au palais de justice qui va être sur ma...
Moi, je ne connais pas. Je ne connais personne au palais de justice qui peut vous répondre là-dessus.
Il n'y a personne au palais de justice qui est en mesure...
Moi, je n'en connais pas. Moi, je n'en connais pas. C'est juste ça que je veux vous dire.
Mais écoutez, je trouve ça quand même aberrant qu'un juge de la Cour supérieure me dise...
Any comments? So the judge from the Superior Court...
The judge is sliding.
Yeah, he was just avoiding the question.
He has no right. Well, no, he answered. Nobody at the courthouse can answer about if the court is legitimate, legal, or constitutional. Not even himself, because they are not, and he doesn't want to. He knows he's being entrapped by Paul. He knows it's a tricky question. As soon as the judge say, "I'm not constitutional, not legal," who are you? Who are you? What am I doing here? You're not a judge. He's obviously not a lawyer. This guy's obviously not a cop. Basically, you're all liars. So goodbye. I'm going home. I'm not about to pay the rent, because by the way, the mortgage are all illegal. Want to know about the law about Desjardins? How they got formed? It's a private law in front of an illegal structure. They have no say. They're the biggest business in Quebec. The biggest lender, the biggest bank with the most branch. They're illegal. What does it do to Quebec's economy if we take out Desjardins? They're out for the count. Michel Lebrun, a national hero. Former Quebec Bar Association lawyer. Former crook too. But yeah, he took on them several times and could never ever get anything done because he was basing his case on Constitution. They would never hear him. They would never yield to him. He never won a case. Attended to the grand jury as a witness, by the way, he's protected, about what happened in 1968. The Legislative Council of the Province of Quebec was illegally dissolved. This was unconstitutional. The disbanding of the council, in fact, created 11 infractions contrary to the Constitution. Remember article that I read just a moment ago. Render inoperative any contrary provision, therefore creating an illegal structure called the National Assembly of Quebec. Therefore, a province is not part of the country, and there are people elected in that province to go in Ottawa in the name of the province. They're also illegal, renders illegal the entire government of Canada, because they're not government, they're a corporation. The Legislative Council, and this is historic, was put in place to prevent abuse of the Constitution by the Executive Assembly, in other words, the National Assembly. The Executive Assembly now makes law that better serve themselves than the people of Quebec without any legal, lawful, nor constitutional ground to stand on. 1968 coup d'etat, and what is a coup d'etat doesn't need to be 1968. A sudden decisive exercise of force in politics, especially the violent throw or alteration of an existing government by a small group, which is exactly what happened. The sudden, forcible overthrow of a ruler, government, etc., sometimes with violence by a small group of people already having some political or military authority. That's exactly what happened to us. It was a coup d'etat. And here we're going to provide you with a grand jury excerpt. Maureen's going to play it. I'm going to take a short moment. I'll be right back.
Okay, let's fix the sound first before we start.
It's going to be okay. The previous one is done that way, so just launch the next one. So this is the grand jury before you get started. This is in fact the grand jury, the one in 2015. We have 39 hours of recording. It's all as boring as that, but here you can notice several things. Paul Leblond first behind the blue keyboard, myself, of course, the clown of the place, Jacques-Antoine Normandin, which was president of the grand jury, Michel, I remember, I don't know. Abdoin, merci beaucoup. Boy, he's gonna hate me now. My former stepfather, which was secretary there, but also on the stand is right there in the foreground is the criminal code open, because Angèle, when she was presenting her case, I was going through the criminal code. That's how we ended up having 110 charges that were later prosecuted. So yeah, you're gonna hear a little bit. You've got the time, I think, Maureen. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna take a short break.
Donc, écoutez, la session reprend. Je demanderai à l'Assemblée de respecter un certain décorum. Donc, les termes, il faut faire attention et tout ça. Vous pouvez poser des questions, mais on écoute Maître Michel Lebrun et Jean-François ici. C'est très important. C'est des questions constitutionnelles, des questions de devoir. Donc, je pense que ça va instruire beaucoup de monde.
Si on a des questions, on les posera après.
Non, même peut-être durant, si ça ne dérange pas Michel ou Jean-François, il n'y a pas de problème.
Non, ça me va, il n'y a pas de problème.
C'est bon?
Tant qu'il n'y a pas 10-12 questions en même temps,
non,
ça va pas
c'est ça.
Ok. Est-ce que tu veux j'aimerais ça rester ici quand même. Puis j'aimerais que le tableau, Michel, puisse l'avoir à la fin du témoin.
Je vous rappelle qu'on protège nos témoins, l'accord qui est dans le Canada est signataire. Des gens qui ont donc une visite de toute poursuite suite à leur témoignage, mais seulement quand ils sont assis dans la chaise qui est là, je sais bien que c'est symbolique, la chaise. Mais l'accord de Rome, lui, n'est pas symbolique. Puis la raison pourquoi on fait ça comme ça, éventuellement, c'est que nous, on cherche l'application de la loi. Que ce soit celle-là, que ce soit le code criminel. Et on sait dans le même temps que ces gens-là sont illégitimes. Donc, en réalité, ce qui est écrit dans le code criminel, toutes les lois qui ont été faites après la haute trahison, sont invalides. C'est là aussi. Mais, eux autres, ils clament qu'ils agissent par ça. Fait qu'il faut avoir une façon de leur rentrer un mandat pour essayer de prouver qu'ils seraient légitimes d'être là, parce que c'est ça le but d'un grand jury, c'est de voir s'il y a matière à une enquête criminelle. Donc, Jean-François, lui, va parler de ce qu'il va parler, je vais lui laisser faire. Puis je le sais très bien, c'est mon sacré par contre. Moi, je vais aller m'asseoir dans le public. Pour lui, je ne devrais pas avoir à intervenir comme les autres. Il n'a pas sollicité mon assistance. Donc, je vais me retrouver assis dans ces chaises-là. Je n'aurai pas grand-chose à dire. Là, ça va être criminel. Je m'en occupe, Michel Villet, je m'en occupe.
Oh, by the way, pause it. Just to let you know that this table is this wide, this is one of the stack, this is Denny's file only.
Oh.
We're getting short on, so 5 minutes, okay, we'll let this slide finish, thank you. We're gonna take a short break within the next 5 minutes. This is Michel Lebrun, former Bar Association lawyer, protected witness, which is explaining to the grand jury how they've done their thing.
Alors, en 1867, a été créé ou a été adopté l'acte constitutionnel de 1867 par le Parlement britannique. C'est important cette distinction-là parce que ici, ça se passe seulement en Angleterre. Et de l'autre côté, ici, c'est ce qui s'est passé au Québec. Alors, en 1867, ce qu'on crée, c'est pour le Québec, c'est le lieutenant-gouverneur avec le Conseil législatif et l'Assemblée législative. À ce moment-là, en 1867, il n'y a pas de loi ici. Il n'y a pas de loi provinciale à ce moment-là. C'est vers les années 1886 environ que le Québec va décider de faire une loi provinciale sur la législature. Alors, ils vont reproduire une photocopie de ça, Et puis, ils vont dire que c'est le conseil législatif, c'est l'Assemblée du Québec. C'est important cette distinction-là parce que, avec jusqu'en 1931, on ne pouvait pas changer les lois, on ne pouvait pas modifier les lois britanniques. En 1931, il y a eu le statut de Westminster où, à partir de ce moment-là, les colonies Canada pouvaient changer ou modifier les lois britanniques qui étaient imposées au Canada. Sauf une qui était cette loi-là, la loi constitutionnelle de 1867, qu'on ne pouvait pas toucher. Et les articles qu'on ne pouvait pas toucher et qui nous touchent finalement, en gros.
So he's saying that they can modify their internal provincial constitution, but they cannot touch the BNA Act. It's not theirs. So that's what he's saying. So I will read that and then we'll take a short break. It's very powerful. This is a judgment from the Supreme Court related to the secession of Quebec, but I warn you, it applies to in each province or anybody, any other clown will try to do against this. Quebec does not have unilateral right of secession under the Constitution of Canada. However, a clear majority voting on a clear question on Quebec's secession would entail a constitutional obligation to negotiation with other player in the Canadian Federation. Moreover, under international law, Quebec does not have unilateral right to secession. Is that clear enough? Nobody can split from Canada unless they've been, of course, But Quebec is not being bullied. They're very much part of the process of governing Canada, having named the immense majority of the Canadian prime ministers and much of the important minister over the last year. So it's not like Bosnia that was destroyed by Chechnya or something like that, where they get bullied and their people don't have right to occupy any function. They don't have it. It's not like that. Canada was a good country to live in. Quebec was not badly treated. They still wanted out. They could not do it. Then they cannot do it to this day. Alberta cannot split from Canada. So there will be clowns that will tell you that you gotta make, because there's a constitutional issue, you gotta make 10 countries out of the province and then they gotta get together and sign a new constitution. These people are clowns. They're fooling you. They're part of the problem, not part of the solution. Province were never given the power of being country. They can have their internal constitution, but it cannot be over the Constitution of Canada. So on these words, let's take a short break.
Good sheet.
We're back onto it, so we've got 12 minutes before we need to change the technical issue here. So the precedent at the Supreme Court of Canada. How could the province of Quebec be unable in 1868 to change a British North American Act, since the Supreme Court cite the following? Thirdly, the British Parliament cannot make a change to the Constitution of Canada at the sole request of a Canadian province. They're not country. Some attempt has been made by province in that direction without any success. The first, which date back to 1868, so 1 year after the BNA Act, emanated from the province that was not satisfied.
Which province was that?
I don't know. I don't have the judgment with me. We took excerpt from those judgments. So you want to have them? I can give you the number. You've got it there. Supreme Court 1998, 2 SRC, blah 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 blah. The judgment's there. All right, I'm gonna go faster here, even though it was pretty fast up until now. De facto, I'm gonna read, and that's the status of the government right now. De facto, and they're not government, by the way, they're criminal. Indeed, that's the direct translation. In fact, it is a Latin word. This phrase is used to characterize an officer, a government, a past action, or state of affair which exists actually, for now, and must be accepted for all practical purpose, but which is illegal and or illegitimate. In this sense, it is a contrary of de jure, which means rightful, legitimate, just, or constitutional. Thus, an officer, king, government, de facto is one who is in actual possession or of the office, or supreme power, but by usurpation. in respect to lawful title, while an officer, king, or governor de jure is one who has just claim and rightful title to the office or power, but who has never had plenary possession of the same or is not now in actual possession. What is de jure? Exactly what we're doing today. Of right, legitimate. That's the translation. The meaning is lawful, by right and just title. In that sense, it is a contrary of de facto. It may also be contrasted with de gratia, which means, in which case it means as matter of right, or by grace or favor. Again, it may be contrasted with equitate, here meaning by law, as the latter mean by equity.
So how do you say that word again? De jure?
De jure.
De jure.
Yeah, de jure could do, but it's not really the right pronunciation. De jure, it's Latin. Even I have problem with my French, so we don't speak Latin anymore. It comes from the Black Law Dictionary, those definitions, by the way. So if you don't believe us, I don't care. Facts are facts. So Canada is a registered corporation, which was brought before the grand jury. Canada is a corporation since the coup d'etat of 1968 by the national state of Quebec. This goes against the judgment of the Supreme Court of Canada related to the secession of Quebec. It's registered as a corporation with the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission. If you don't believe us, I don't care. Go and check the sec.gov.us. And by the way, the government of the United States has the same problem. They're a corporation. And type in Canada, and you will see that it's like here at the bottom, it says Corporation of Canada. We've highlighted and put it in red for you. So, believe me or not, it is a corporation, and the address of the corporation is the Canadian Embassy. They're not embassy of anything, but a corporation. So, anyway, they're located 501 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., and you got a postal code and the phone number if you want to give them a call and ask them a question, but I guarantee they won't answer. Because Washington, D.C. is not a part of the United States either. It is a city-state, one of three who has pulled a coup d'etat, the worldwide coup d'etat, because it is not solemnly limited to Canada what happened. There are three city-states. We can trace back the problem to the city of London when they burnt it down in 1666, for those who like number. The city of London is not part of London, the city, which is totally different. It's a town, it's a whatever you call it. But yeah, the city of London is a 2 square kilometer enclave within that city that we know as London. It is not part of United Kingdom, and this is where it happens that the Bank of England has set its office. So it's a foreign office there as well. They have the same problem there. But I told you I don't do politics and I don't do international, so I'll let them deal with their trashy situation. We've got plenty on our hands, but I'm just going to put this in bracket. Vatican City is not part of Rome, and it's not part of Italy. So yeah, the 3 city-states, they're all in it together. Parliament of Canada Act, to prove to you again with facts that we don't have a government, or at least not a legal government in any way, shape or form. You can read it for yourself. It's an act respecting the Parliament of Canada, which was written in 1985. Article 2 says, Parliament shall not determine or be dissolved by the demise of the Crown, and notwithstanding the demise shall continue and may meet, convene, and sit, proceed, and act in the same manner as if that demise had not happened. Demise means a person death, conveyance, or transfer of property or title by demising. And it's also a synonym of devolution, the transfer or delegation of power to a lower level, especially by a central government to a local or regional administration. And we have the court case to say that this is all illegal. A province cannot assume the federal government level power, and the same goes around. The federal government power cannot assume power of province, but none of these can assume the charge or power of the queen or the king, or otherwise known as sovereign. Everybody, and this is what we call partition of power. Everybody has their own duty, and they cannot be expected, nor they can assume the duty of other. When I'm the janitor, you don't touch my broom. When I'm the neurosurgeon, the janitors can certainly not come in and use the scalpel. That's as simple as that. And the neurosurgeon cannot tell the janitor to do his job. Do your job. So, who is Queen Elizabeth? I don't know if anybody can give me an answer. I know her real name, though. Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. That's her family name. That's what it says on her credit card. Else than that, I don't know. Rothschild puppet, most likely. So, we've provided you with remedy up until now through the grand jury. Now we're taking a notch up the step about remedy of Canada. We've written and notarized a royal claim of right. That was the last time the Notary Public was involved in anything that we do, because he's not more legal than anything else. So by the way, your transaction on your own has nothing legal, but it was still done, so yes, it's still an act. So we've written the royal claim of right, sent it to Westminster and Buckingham Palace, and we've got
2 letters from the Queen. We had no answer, but the years before I have.
Yeah, your thing before. Let's not talk about it. So no answer. What do you get when you get no answer? You get a default. When you get a default, your way is the right way. So the constitutional case, freedom of association, was also sent to Westminster and Buckingham Palace. This is when you got your letter. The office replied that the case should be addressed to the de facto Governor General of Canada, sending us back, and I'm speaking on behalf of Angèle here, sending us back to the accused. So, yeah, they have nothing to say for their own defense. Parliament Act 1995 can be translated from French directly, thanks to my friend Google. The devolution of the crown does not have the effect of interrupting or dissolving the parliament, which can continue to function as if there has been no devolution. And I'll tell you right now, this law has no legal or lawful validity. So in other words, they could not have done that. So they're acting now, Parliament, pretending that there's a queen, accusing you in criminal justice as if there's a crown. It's all a lie, and we can prove it. Take a penny out of your pocket, but you don't have any because you don't have many pockets or pennies. And you can notice the difference. One has a crown, the other one does not. By the way, if they pulled out the penny, how much penny do you need to make $1? Yeah, 100. So if the penny is illegal, 100 pennies, even if they're represented under one coin, it's also illegal. So your dollar is worth nothing. They have no right to take out that penny from circulation. What they should have done is keep one in the Bank of Canada, saying this is worth every penny in Canada. But no, they've flat out taken it up. It's not a valid currency anymore. So therefore, all you have in your pocket, all you ever worked for, all you will earn in the future is fiat. We're going to skip the next one. Alright, so part of the solution, I just told you, we written a royal claim of right. On top of that, we created a de jure society, and we hope to offer you a position into that de jure society today, which is going to be an historical moment. So we formed a not-for-profit society in 2017, so that was 2 years ago to this day, and sent the royal claim of right to Westminster and Buckingham Palace. The Royal Public Society of Canada is also known under acronym from French, SRPC, so Société Royale Publique du Canada. So the SRPC forms the official, lawful, and constitutional government of Canada by consent and authorization of the people of Canada. Why is so? Because the grand jury was made of people, and they told us to move our ass to correct the situation. So that was part of it. Under the Great Seal of Canada, even though it is being currently detained in the House of Commons, we cannot go there and just break in. They have it, but it's still ours. By the Canada Act 1982, Chapter 11 from the UK, all other legal positions of the Government of Canada of lower rank, this includes the elected official, are to be filled according to the criteria of the function in question based on the need of people in Canada. And I'm going to take excerpt now from the Royal Claim of Right to show you we were very serious about it. Whereas the monarchy of Canada or sovereign of Canada, as well as the constitutional monarchy of Canada, has not legally, lawfully, or constitutionally designated an official successor, name, or by hereditary inheritance of royal right, royal lineage, of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Scotland. Should have read Ireland here. It's me who made a little mistake. Whereas good government require that public policy be based on the supreme law of the Constitution of Canada, which render inoperative any contrary position. You will recognize this as Article 52 from the Constitution. In other words, whereas the people of Canada as a whole, so you, superior in fact as well as in law, is and remain the owner beneficiary of the sovereign of Canada, delegated in trust through the Canada Act 1982 Chapter 11 from the UK as Royal Sovereign of Canada or King of Canada, all constituting the nation of Canada. So once again, it is your country. You are at the top of the food chain, and everything that you've created to serve you can never ever emancipate from you. It's just that you forgot it, or you will lie about it. Whereas the Royal Sovereign or King of Canada is a public servant and all federal, provincial, or territorial delegate, and I will add to this any entity, corporation, appointed by him to ensure public order and good governance of Canada are subject to the Constitution of Canada. Note that people of Canada is not in that sentence. You are the owner beneficiary, and you will always remain the owner and beneficiary. Whereas the royal right claim does not constitute a rebellion, a revolt, or a revolution, nor unlawful or criminal opposition. This act does not constitute in any way the revocation of any, if they exist, of the royal right to the rightful claimant. This act does not constitute an infringement on the previous royal person, nor does it infringe on any act resulting from a prohibited or criminal act. The present claim of royal right public act is presented with a view to redressing wrong for public order and good governance. How much time?
Oh, how much time on this? How much time on that?
Oh, on this thing?
Yeah.
It says 12. Oh, nice. Doesn't say 12. I can't even see it. Yeah, I don't know. You might have to look. I'm the worst person you gotta ask.
Now? All right, we're back onto it. So we've got 12 minutes before we need to change the technical issue here. So the precedent at the Supreme Court of Canada. How could the province of Quebec be unable in 1868 to change a British North American Act, since the Supreme Court cite the following? Thirdly, the British Parliament cannot make a change to the Constitution of Canada at the sole request of a Canadian province. They're not country. Some attempt has been made by province in that direction without any success. The first, which date back to 1868, so 1 year after the BNA Act, emanated from the province that was not satisfied.
Which province was that?
I don't know. I don't have the judgment with me. We took excerpt from those judgments. So you want to have them? I can give you the number. You've got it there. Supreme Court 1998, 2 SRC, blah 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 blah. The judgment's there. All right, I'm gonna go faster here, even though it was pretty fast up until now. De facto, I'm gonna read, and that's the status of the government right now. De facto, and they're not government, by the way, they're criminal. Indeed, that's the direct translation. In fact, it is a Latin word. This phrase is used to characterize an officer, a government, a past action, or state of affair which exists actually, for now, and must be accepted for all practical purpose, but which is illegal and or illegitimate. In this sense, it is a contrary of de jure, which means rightful, legitimate, just, or constitutional. Thus, an officer, king, government de facto is one who is in actual possession or of the office, or supreme power, but by usurpation, in respect to lawful title, while an officer, king, or governor de jure is one who has just claim and rightful title to the office or power, but who has never had plenary possession of the same or is not now in actual possession. What is de jure? Exactly what we're doing today. Of right, legitimate. That's the translation. The meaning is lawful, by right and just title. In that sense, it is a contrary of de facto. It may also be contrasted with de gratia, which means, in which case it means as matter of right, or by grace or favor. Again, it may be contrasted with equitate, here meaning by law, as the latter mean by equity.
So how do you say that word again? De jure?
De jure.
De jure.
Yeah, de jure could do, but it's not really the right pronunciation. De jure, it's Latin. Even I have problem with my French, so we don't speak Latin anymore. It comes from the Black Law Dictionary, those definitions, by the way. So if you don't believe us, I don't care. Facts are facts. So Canada is a registered corporation, which was brought before the grand jury. Canada is a corporation since the coup d'etat of 1968 by the national state of Quebec. This goes against the judgment of the Supreme Court of Canada related to the secession of Quebec. It's registered as a corporation with the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. If you don't believe us, I don't care. Go and check the sec.gov.us. And by the way, the government of the United States has the same problem. They're a corporation. And type in Canada, and you will see that it said, like here at the bottom, it says Corporation of Canada. We've highlighted and put it in red for you. So, believe me or not, it is a corporation, and the address of the corporation is the Canadian Embassy. They're not embassy of anything, but a corporation. So, anyway, they're located 501 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C., and you got a postal code and the phone number if you want to give them a call and ask them a question, but I guarantee they won't answer. Because Washington, D.C. is not a part of the United States either. It is a city-state, one of three who has pulled a coup d'etat, the worldwide coup d'etat, because it is not solemnly limited to Canada. What happened? There are three city-states. We can trace back the problem to the city of London when they burnt it down in 1666, for those who like number. The city of London is not part of London, the city, which is totally different. It's a town, it's a whatever you call it. But yeah, the city of London is a 2 square kilometer enclave within that city that we know as London. It is not part of United.
We're back into it. Alright, Elizabeth II, no comments. Previous queen of hereditary right or legitimate Canada sovereign or any other person having right in the order of succession has not expressed any desire or wish to resume the role of royal sovereign of Canada entrusted by the people after the official devolution, so Act of Parliament 1985, subsequent to the repatriation of the Constitution of the Canada Act 1982, blah blah blah, to this day. The absence alone justify the present claim of royal right. De jure political legitimacy reinforced the legal for Denny First, hereby present, in regard to the royal claim of right of the title and function of King of Canada. The 20 years of an acquired right in relation to the independence of Canada have passed, thus undoubtedly removing any right that would have been acquired by hereditary or past legitimacy. So if you doubt anything, this is the last act that was done before an old republic. Here it is, the Denny the First, King of Canada, swearing his oath to the Constitution on April 4th, 2017 in the Town Hall of the Municipality of La Macasa. You will recognize the flag that is here, and the Constitution that is here, and the Royal Claim of Right that is here. These are all the original documents that were here. And that's pretty much what we had then when we did that. So this is when he was sworn into his post or his title, which was coming in effect. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. This is what he said that day. I'll read that to you. And I'm speaking on behalf of King Denny I right now. I swear that all that is represented by the present claim does not constitute normality. It is made by extraordinary recourse as a matter of urgency in assistance to person in danger, or human in danger if you prefer, under the law of the Good Samaritan Act, in order to defend the people and the nation of Canada through the application of the Canada Act 1982, chapter blah blah blah. I swear that I have no personal interest in doing so, that I act in good faith in order to redress wrongdoing. I swear the truth of all the facts alleged to
the best of my knowledge. In order to justify this claim, I swear allegiance to the Canada Act 1982, Chapter 11, blah, blah, blah. I sign freely and voluntarily by Denis Paiement, King of Canada. We have crowned Denis Paiement in front of Parliament on July 1st, 2017, in front of everybody. It was a public act. We have not hidden anything from the people. It's not because they haven't showed up that we haven't tried. We were there. This is a video. This is a picture from a video. There were many cops around us. They put barrier exactly just for us to do that. They were expecting us. Because we were public about it. It was done. It's been 2 years. Nobody has contested. And then he's there. He's alive. Are you alive? T'es-tu en vie?
Yeah. You're not in jail. What the hell?
Alright, how have we done that?
Oh, yeah, flipping.
We simply went there and we've done it. Did we ask permission to anybody? Fuck no. Oh, just no. Excuse my French. It needed to be done. It needed to be done for 88 years, ladies and gentlemen, if not more. When Britain sent us the status of Westminster, they basically told Canada to go themselves. We don't want anything to do with you anymore. Because the goal of the First World War and subsequently Second World War was to destroy the British Empire. And they succeed. Then they didn't care about the empire itself. What they wanted to get rid of was common law. Because that was what was preventing them from taking over everything, including your life. And they knew back in 1936, because we were too slow to understand back then. Well, I wasn't there because I could have got it. But Roger Russell Smith understood. He was part of government of Alberta, I think, at the time. And he pointed at it, and you can see it here. And I've got the document. If you don't believe in it, I don't care. It is the fact. And he said back then, the next step is what we're doing today, is an interprovincial conference where an agreement can be reached upon the power to be conferred to the central government or on the central government, and the power which must be retained by the province. First of all, power must be conferred upon appointed representative of all the province, so as to carry on the government of Canada, and with the power to call an election as soon as possible after the Constitution has been ratified by the people of each and all the provinces. So, welcome. You're it. Is there anything that I need to explain about what Roger Russell Smith knew in 1937? Is it too hard to understand that we're doing the right thing? You understand now why the RCMP is not smashing through the door? It is the right thing to do in a peaceful assembly of the people. And we may come from Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, Labrador, or British Columbia, or anything in between that I want to name. Well, I'll name it all. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec, and New Brunswick. We're all here. Exactly for that. We're doing the right thing, and anybody who is not here is wrong. I don't care what your name is. Next step for a de jure society. So after I'm done talking, or you kick me out because you've had enough of me, this is what's going to happen. The next step of a de jure society: signature of the Act of Union of the de jure Canada, reading and signature on the Constitution of Canada, 1867-1982. Anybody that will tell you, why don't you write your own constitution, I got an answer. Go and take a hike. Nomination of de jure Governor General and Lieutenant Governor for each province, and a renewal of the royal claim of right for at least 2 years. We've had the de jure King for 2 years. He's done a good job. Anybody will tell you he's a tyrant. He's not a tyrant. He's not ordered anything to the people. He did issue order for the government to stand down, or the criminal organization, because there's no government. Nothing addressed to you, and he's right there. If you feel like he's a tyrant, go and look at him. And tell him straight in the face he's a fucking...
Excuse your French.
You're done.
Kick me out. We're gonna take a break now.
It's always hard talking after Jeff because that guy can talk. Boy, can he talk.
Yeah, but not like.
So we're going to talk, part 3 is a little bit about where do we go now, but it's also, I want to talk to you a little bit about the division that's within our country right now. One man cannot make a de jure society. If he was to decide how everything was to go from this point forward, he would be no better than the dictators that we have in office right now. The grand jury case and the claim of royal rights chart the way for a future that's created by the people and for the people. They've laid an opportunity at our feet for a better Canada, and we require the active participation from all of you to make this move forward. So when they first said, why don't you stand up for LG, for Alberta, I said, I can't do that, I'm not qualified. And then as I got to know more and more about what they did at the grand jury, what they learned from the grand jury, I started to believe in myself, and I said, well, why am I not qualified? So if you compare me to our current leader, we can just take a look here. First of all, I completed my university education, not once, but 3 times. As a single mother, I learned how to balance my checkbook, and I learned not to take on too much debt. Compare that to our current leader. I have a good heart with good intent and a will to see our country succeed. I'm not profiting from this initiative in any way. It's actually costing me a little bit, but that's okay. I appreciate our truly Canadian identity. I love our national anthem, the original version, and I love our national flag. I understand enough about the Constitution to know that the current government is not governing according to the Constitution, and in preceding governments as well. And I'll stand up and make my oath onto the Constitution of Canada. So I want to talk a little bit about why the de jure society is the best option. If you look what we have in place right now, this is an article from a Supreme Court case in 1951, and Angèle spoke to it briefly. Actually, she has this memorized. What it reads from that Supreme Court judgment is, the Constitution of Canada does not belong either to the Parliament or to the legislatures. It belongs to the country, and it is there that the citizens of the country will find the protection of the rights to which they are entitled. Powerful statement from a powerful court. It is we the people who own the Constitution, and it's we the people that can amend it, abolish it, or adopt it as we see fit. With that right, I want to remind you that we have great responsibility. This is another reason why we need to change our political infrastructure. This is a case from Wilton Littlechild in Alberta in 1990. And what this was about was when the GST legislation was going to be adopted, the constituents of this fellow took him to court saying that he's not representing their wishes. And what happened in this judgment, the judge says, I know of no legal duty on an elected representative at any level of government to consult with his constituents or determine their views. While such an obligation may generally be considered desirable, there is no legal requirement. Folks, the people that we elect have no legal requirement to govern according to our wishes. So why are we wasting our time? Here's another little thank you. Here's another little piece of legislation that I thought was important. This comes out of the Alberta Legislation Act, Assembly Act, and what it says right on page 2 of that document, it says all persons making use of this consolidation are reminded that it has no legislative sanction, that amendments have been embodied for convenience of reference only. So what documents do have relevance in our current system? I'm not sure. There's a couple other excerpts there about immunity for members, And basically what that says is if you're a member of the assembly and you're acting under the assembly, you are immune from any prosecution. So it gives them legal legs to stand on, and they can pretty much do whatever they want, and that's what they do. So if de jure society isn't the way to go, and you think that we can just elect another party, I want to show you that that's maybe not the case. All you need to do is go to Paralinfo or Canadian Parliament webpage and look at speeches from the throne, and they have them listed there from maybe the 1920s all the way up to current. On the next page, I pulled 5 different decades of excerpts from those speech thrones, and they basically say the same thing year after year after year after year. The same promises are said over and over and over again. If there was any resolution to the promises that they were giving us, they wouldn't have to keep making these promises, but they don't. These examples are just from the budget. Each one says that they're going to live towards their budget, they're going to reduce the deficit, and it doesn't matter what they say, whether it's in regards to taxes, in regards to the budget, in regards to looking after our First Nations people, in regards to protecting the environment. The same promises are made over and over and over again, and we never see any resolution. Electing another party doesn't work. Something else that you can do on your own is take a look at where the money comes for the politicians. Go to Elections Canada and look into the contributions, and you'll find some interesting things. I pulled out a few just to show you. So the first one here is Frank Gustra and his contributions. What I want to show you is that corruption supports both sides of the political spectrum. So it doesn't matter whether you're left or you're right. The people that are giving you the money to do your thing are supporting both sides. Frank Gustra, you can see sometimes he goes just by Frank Gustra, sometimes it's Frank F. Gustra. He's got 2 different postal codes in there. And if you don't know anything about Frank Gustra, it's easy to do a Google search and you'll see some of the headlines that we're showing here today, heavily involved with the Clinton Uranium One scandal. Corruption supports both sides. The next one I want to show you is the Bronfmans, and again, another well-heeled family in our society that support both sides. All members of the Bronfman families support to liberals or conservatives. And again, you can see that they go by the same names, they go by different postal codes, and they support both parties. Again, if you're not familiar with the Bronfmans, do a Google search. You will find these headlines under that search. Seagram heiress Claire Bronfman pleads guilty in the Nixium sex slave case. That's a court case that's ongoing currently in the United States. It's a huge child trafficking, enslavement cult that's on trial right now. Stephen Bronfman, lead fundraiser for Trudeau in 2015, linked to the offshore tax haven Paradise Papers, also known as Panama Papers. There was a huge leak that listed all of the corporations and people that have used offshore tax havens to hide their revenue so that they don't have to pay taxes. We're losing $8 billion a year in revenue from these people that hide their money. The Canada Revenue Agency has been looking into this. It's already, I think, 3 years old, and there is not one charge been laid yet. So do you think that these people with money can pull strings? You bet they do. Corruption supports both sides. The last example here is the Desmarais. Those of you in Quebec are very familiar with that name. A very powerful family. Paul Desmarais, of course, took over Power Corp in 1968. Power Corp has multiple companies listed under that name, including companies in transportation, pulp and paper, large financial organizations, and communications. There's a quote here from the Globe and Mail that I thought was very interesting, and it says, Desmarais has been personally consulted by prime ministers on every major federal, economic, and constitutional initiative since the 1970s. Most of the time, they've taken his advice. Who's pulling the strings and who's running the government? I would suggest to you that it's these powerful corporations with their lobbying that are making the decisions. This is a long one, and I want to read it because it's an excellent summary of how our politics run in this country.
That was the right word.
Yeah, in this corporation. So Canada's elite own the banks and financial institutions, own our central bank, which sets the interest rates, gives loans and collect on debt, pushing people deeper into servitude and slavery, poverty as punishment. They control our media, which shapes our views and opinions. They sit on the boards of our universities, putting future generations into debt before they have a chance at life, and control the knowledge economy for which they have defined the purpose of education. They influence and control our governments and political leaders. They sit on the boards of the think tanks that write policy and promote political agendas, and they run the foundations and claim themselves to be benevolent philanthropists, when philanthropy at its best is moral masturbation for the wealthy, a way to feel good about their vast disparity of wealth, and all its more organized levels is simply a means through which to engage in social engineering and social control, to give a little in order to continue taking so much. They profit off the foreign wars our country wages and supports, blood plunderers of the Congo, Afghanistan, and Libya. The Canadian elite rule the country as a proxy for the American empire, acting as a resource suction cup for the behemoth below us, providing the United States with most of its oil, water, electricity, and timber. Those rapacious parasites claim they hold the answers to the crisis they cause and create and profit from. This is an article from an alternative media representative, Andrew Gavin Marshall, from the Media Co-op, and if you ever get an opportunity to go and look at some of the articles that he writes, he does a very good job at identifying all of the links between the corporate elites and the government officials. Does a very good job. So the New World Order, I don't want to talk a whole lot about that. A lot of people still believe that it's a conspiracy theory. I'm going to show you a little bit of why it's not. We, Canada, signed on to the Universal Agenda for Humanity in 2015, and there are still people that are not aware of what the UN Agenda 2030 is all about. So what they've done is they've created some 17 sustainable goals in order to further their agenda of one world government. If you look at a lot of things that are happening in our world today, they all tie in to these 17 sustainable goals, such as the climate change propaganda, such as the gender issues, such as the feeling education of our children. Everything ties in to these 17 sustainable goals. The New World Order is not new. In fact, it's been implemented over a very long time, a little bit at a time, so that we don't notice what's going on. This is an excerpt from a throne speech in 1945, and what it reads: "In the building of a new world order, my ministers are determined to seek, above all else, the promotion of peace, work, and health in domestic and international relations." So, not new to Canada, just not well covered by the media. we need to get this message out that this is what they're trying to do, and get the message out that people need to take a look at those sustainable development goals and compare what it says in those goals to what's occurring in our environment today. So this is a short video from Press for Truth, Dan Dix. He does an excellent job at showing how widespread the New World Order is and for how long it's been going on. But there are still people that don't know about it.
Some have to be changed.
Our view is that all of these national systems of regulation have to be fixed, but there also has to be international coordination. There has to be an international peer review process for national regulations. So there is transparency, there's peer review and peer assessment. We undergo that in Canada. It's been very useful when we have undergone it, and we think all countries need to be part of that. It does not detract from national sovereignty. Nation states are clearly going to exercise their rights to regulate their financial system. But in a globalized economy, we are going to have to take global responsibilities. And there is going to have to be some semblance of global governance on these questions. We can't operate where major financial systems are operating in a manner that is not transparent. Because it infects the entire global economy. So that problem does have to be fixed.
The hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. Now we can see a new world coming into view, a world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
There's a need for a new world order. In the next few years, a solution will emerge. That people will look into that cauldron and decide that they have to learn the elements. But I think that at the end of this administration, with all its turmoil, and at the beginning of the next, we might actually witness the creation of a new order.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
It is a new mindset that the world now needs. It is a real global New Deal that we need, an ecological and an economic New Deal that we need. In the name of France, I call upon all states to join ranks in order to found the new world order of the 21st century.
I think the new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation. We need a world of shared global rules, founded on shared global values.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
The New World Order essentially is an agenda. It's a plan.
to unite the world into one, whether it be one world government, one world cash system, one world religion. It's all about uniting everything into one.
That's good. So one world government, one world finance, one world healthcare. If you want to talk about sovereignty, any further movements within this agenda, we will lose all of our sovereignty to the United Nations. I said that. Yeah. Okay, so I can't tell you the official narrative of the 17 sustainable goals and exactly what they're doing to make this happen, the UN Agenda 2030 to make it happen. But I can tell you I know enough to question the official narrative. And I don't believe they're telling us the whole story. The grand jury provides factual evidence that our leaders have not been forthright about the state of our Constitution, the supreme law, and about the Corporation of Canada, or about the injustice in our justice system. So if they're not honest to us about these basic things, what else are they dishonest about? What are they telling us about climate change? What is the truth? Taxes, education, and so on. Those leaders are selected before we even have a chance to vote. So unity is the key if we're going to move forward, and especially with a de jure society. As a nation, the more divided we are, the weaker we are. Our country has never been so divided, whether that division is based on race, religion, political beliefs, social status, educational level, or nationality. I have never seen so much division in social media in my lifetime. It doesn't matter to those who want to further this agenda. What they want to do is to divide us, and they do that through deception and distraction. So what I want to encourage all of you is drop the rhetoric. It doesn't matter Muslim, Canadian, Jewish, religion, sex, anything. Drop the rhetoric, because as you've seen from the previous slides, those who are selected from the political elites to create division, and the elites support both sides. They are creating the division, and we need to forget about all of that division and concentrate on a de jure society and move forward. The plan has long been developed and slowly implemented. Like you've seen, there was an excerpt in 1945 in our speech to the throne. What we need to do is counter this evil by exposing the government. So that's where our focus needs to be. Not on race, not on religion, not on education, but what is the government doing to deceive us? We need to expose that. There's three vital elements if we're to move forward, and that is unity. We need to be united. The more we can come together and get people together, the stronger we'll be. The more they are allowed to divide us, the weaker we'll be. Morality. We need to move forward with morals. We need to bring back those morals that we were raised with. And truth. Never be afraid to stand up and speak the truth. So I just want to give you a couple examples of how they create the division. We need to create communities of caring where we rebuild the family unit and strengthen our resolve so that we're not reliant on fabricated social programs that are meant to fracture the family, not support it. They understand that the family is the cornerstone, the foundation of everything that this country is built on, and they're trying to fracture it. We need to demand that we retain parental authority and not secede to government intervention in the form of false support. When our children are indoctrinated to rebel against parental traditions and societal norms, they're acting on a false sense of fear. We must counter that narrative by instilling values of the past, values that we were brought up with, that have us questioning now what's going on in our world. We can't be afraid to stand up and voice our concerns. Without the strong support of family units and community strength, our children are psychologically and morally underdeveloped, thus resulting in the ability for evildoers to prey upon them and indoctrinate them into the evil ways of a new world order. On education, how have they divided us? They've infiltrated the education system, teaching our children what to think rather than how to think. Modern education has eliminated history, religion, and good manners, and instead it focuses on social experiments and individualism. Think Common Core in the schools, Common Core math. Think climate change, think non-gender washrooms, think safe spaces, and student walkouts for political ideology, just to name a few. Education standards now produce obedient workers rather than independent thinkers. We need to get involved with our school board elections, ask the critical questions of the candidates, and support those who desire a fundamental change to our education system. On the issue of sexuality, family is further fractured with the introduction of sexual freedom without consequences. This concept developed slowly over time, from the 60s and 70s to right now. First, by introducing a pill to allow sexual freedom and media to expose the independence of women, breaking from traditional roles where nurturing and caring were natural and right, to now a role where independence and self-identity is a good thing. Over time, the idea of sexual freedom has developed to the point that we're allowing into our children's education that men can have periods, and that the transitioning of children into the opposite sex is just and right. And parents who disagree can now be jailed. That men can be women and women can be men. Where the issue of consent is highly publicized, yet the accountability has been greatly reduced through legislative changes. Where pedophilia is rampant in our society and media is trying to normalize it to make it appear as a sickness rather than a crime. Just some examples from social media. You will, if you're on social media at all, you see these images everywhere. On the right is a toddler in fishnet stockings. On the left is an article that talks about how women are happier without children or a spouse. They are trying to fracture our families, and we need to put this on the table and discuss it. Where pedophilia is being normalized. I don't think I even have to talk about the picture on the left. Folks, we have lost our morals. We've lost our moral compass. Social media is promoting this garbage and we're allowing it. We need to stand up and demand that social media remove the garbage, quit buying the magazines, quit supporting the corporations that promote this garbage. Political correctness has now evolved to a point where we're afraid to say anything contrary to what this propaganda is telling us. And we need to turn that around. Remember, unity, morality, and truth. On the social support system, they've also infiltrated the support system. They install young professionals who've been taught empty and ineffective theories. Those social systems have us believe that they're protecting our children when in fact they're assisting in the breakdown of our family unit. All of these changes are done under the pretense of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, respect for individual rights over societal or group norms. This creates a society where individual is inherent and must be respected and nurtured. Community rights are self-destructing and the rights of the majority are being ignored. We need to turn this around. The indoctrination of our children leads to family misunderstandings and separation. Because each of us can't see the logic in any other's belief. I'm going through that right now with my daughter. What I see as the truth is not what she sees as the truth, and it creates a lot of friction in our family. Breakdown occurs and it causes each to seek solutions outside of the home environment, and this creates a surge in dependency on the social supports. It increases the use of alcohol and drugs and crime, divorce and abortion and suicide. It keeps the cyclical nature of the system churning and growing. We're taught to seek care in a corrupted social net rather than to rely on our own families to support and nurture. The strengthening of our families and communities would prevent this spiral into destruction. It's pulling our youth down, folks, and we need to change the direction of that starting today. So we talked about this a lot over the last couple of days, and what this idea is if in general you're content with your lot in life, you've got a job, you've got a family, you've got maybe a boat and you can go on a couple of vacations a year, you don't seem to realize what's going on in the world around you. It is only those people that have been up against the system that are now waking up to the destruction that the system is causing. So our jobs today are to go out there and show people the destruction, teach them what's going on in the world, so that they can too wake up and see what we see. We need to, as a society, help all those to see what's transpiring around us, and we need to do that in a way that doesn't make us appear crazy or as conspiracists, that's a hard word, but rather show them through facts and validation, truth and morality. We need to bring the truth to light. A nation that produces strong youth, a society that's cohesive and grouped around common ideals, communities that are developed with strong morals can support and ward off anything that's coming at us. We need to unite. We need to boost and support those leaders in our community who seek to strengthen our morals, who envision a united front, who allow truth to the forefront, and who support our marginalized citizens. At a grassroots level, unity will provide us with the strength to combat world order. Each of us needs to go out into our community and fight for truth, fight for justice, and fight for what we know is right. Know your neighbors, discuss current issues, and solidify our resolve to turn things around. Other things we can do is support local businesses, support your local farmers, boycott industrialized production and corporate autocracy. Stand up for national pride. Stand up for our flag and our national anthem. National unity will weaken any plans to further divide our country. Question your media and support alternative medias who are trying to bring the truth to light. Question those elected in your community who are supposed to represent the needs of the majority, not the wishes of the few. Expose paid mercenaries for what they are. Find the source of their growing movement and seek to expose this. Deal with facts at all times and keep opinions aside. Facts are the only truths that can be realized without confrontation. It's up to us, not as individuals, as we've been led to believe, but as a community, as a family, to unite for common cause and make our world a better place. So I can envision a Canada whereby we're safe and secure in our homes, in our communities, and within our borders. I can envision a Canada where we have access to efficient and affordable health care. where teachers teach us how to think, not what to think, where we have the right to participate in matters that affect all Canadians, where we have equality for all, not special privileges for few, where we have a fair and just payroll system for elected officials and a just and fair pension plan for those same elected officials, where all provinces are equal under the Constitution and Federation, where we have an effective and results-driven environmental program, where corporations are held to account for their part in damaging our lands, where we support the Bank of Canada, the only real bank that belongs to the people. Every other bank is a private bank. Where we have free borders within our country and we're free to travel from province to province. No restrictions on licenses. Where we have equality and justice and we have the ability to grow food or fish or raise chickens or drive as we see fit. No heavy restrictions in licensing. And where we have the ability to foster ideas and develop genius minds. Remove those restrictions from the patent offices. Am I just a dreamer? Is there anybody else, by a show of hands, who hold these same ideals? I think everybody does. How many of you care enough to take action to hold this government to account, to help us spread the word of a de jure society? Yes. How many of you care enough that you're willing to take an active part in forming a new way of governing? Yes. With that, I'm going to leave the final words to Jeff.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now announce the Stanley Cup winner for 2019. No, wrong show, sorry. But I will take an excerpt on the next slide from a movie that was well known from the 1990s that probably all of you have seen 27 times. I've only seen it once. If you built it, there will come. That's a film with Kevin Costner, Field of Dream. There was also a song, Imagine, by John Lennon. The poor guy was killed for this type of song. Imagine a world where, we don't mess around and we could all live in peace on this planet. So that's a dream that's possible if we just wish to take it. If we all dream together, it's something that is possible. So next one is also a picture I was taken off my good friend Google. It shows Falcon Lake, Manitoba, which is where we are right now, and you can't see it, you people watching this broadcast or watching this on my YouTube later, but right across the line at 3 there is the RCMP station. They're about 200 meters from here, so if we've done anything illegal today, they would have stopped us a long time ago by now. Of course, we went by them several times. They know exactly who we are. We've presented them ourselves directly to their office, to their headquarters. So if you think that we've done anything illegal, well, your belief is once again contrary to fact. We are freely assembling here and using our freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of thought, opinion, freedom of press, and not freedom to oppress, by the way, but that's pretty much what we have now when you're watching the mainstream Mockingbird. So if you wish now, we're going to make sure that we put forward the remedy that we started 2 years ago with the claiming of the Crown of Canada from Great Britain. It's been 2 years. Denis has been a wonderful king for us. The main factor for me to wish to be part of that, especially with a leader, is that first he didn't want to be there, so that I think qualified itself in itself. It gives him great qualification for being a good king or a good head of state of Canada, as I prefer to say it. I don't really use the word leader. And second of all, he doesn't know the extent of the power of the King of Canada, so therefore he cannot abuse them in any way, shape, or form. In other words, he's not educated into the job, but he's been at it for 2 years. He's the only Canadian-born sovereign that we've ever had in the story on the long history of this country, which dates back more than 150 years, because there were people before there were people, apparently. They call them native. They've done a good job at managing the land for all this time. I think we can all follow these examples from the people that were there before us, like Maureen said. Get back into strong morality, abide by the truth. We should not run into any problem. None of us here, and I can talk mainly for myself, but none of us here has profited from this. Quite the opposite. We've all put money on the table to make this happen. Our own money. We didn't steal it. We didn't lie. We didn't fraud to get it. Some work their ass 18 hours a day for the bulk of their life to do that, to collect this money, and to be able to turn these things around. So you're more than welcome with your free will, but only if you are of good intent and good art. There are some bad apple in the basket. We don't want to have anything to do with you. We'll expose you for what you are. If you're a liar, if you're trying to pretend that Canada is anything but a constitutional monarchy, well, to hell with you. You can go and take a flight one way, Air Canada. When we're done with that, Air Canada is our airline, and we'll gladly provide it to you for free so you can have your republic anywhere else in the world. Christmas Island is a good place. So yeah, have fun if you believe in Santa Claus. As for ourselves, the De Jure Society has been going on for 2 years now. There were some things that were illegal, so if the king orders anything to the government to stop, it's because they're illegal. It's not because he necessarily decide by himself. These things were illegal, so a simple proclamation will do, and I'll read you these two now. Actually, is there two, or is there only one? Yeah, there's only one. So on this day of grace of January 30th, 2019, so that's almost 6 months old already, by the royal prerogative entrusted to me and by order of Denis First, or Denis Premier, King of Canada de Jure, I hereby declare the participation of Canada in the private organization listed below invalid as signed by the de facto government. First, the United Nations. Second, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Third, International Monetary Fund. Fourth, the Bank of International Settlement. And fifth and final, the World Bank. Order is given to you to obey immediately, and that was signed also by the Governor General of Canada de Jure, Angèle Prince, hereby present. Donc, en ce jour de grâce du 30 janvier 2019, par la prérogative royale qui m'a été confiée et par ordre de Denis Ier, Roi du Canada de Jure, je déclare invalide toute participation du Canada aux organismes privés énumérés ci-après, tels que signés par le gouvernement de facto. Nations Unies, Organisation du traité de l'Atlantique Nord, Fonds monétaire international, Banque de règlements internationaux et Banque mondiale. L'ordre vous est donné d'obéir immédiatement. And now what's going to happen next, we're going to take a break, but before, or after, sorry, we take a break, unionized break, I guess. We're going to read the Constitution, so the delegate here from each and every province know what they're signing into, so that basically if you didn't read it, you'll know about it. If you have ever read it before, that's going to be a refresher, because you know exactly what you're into. And right after this, so to this historical date, on the day of grace of today, what date are we? June 15th, 2015, from Falcon Lake, Manitoba. We are going to sign the following Act of Union, which was redacted a few months back with the help of Angèle and Maureen, hereby present. The Act of Union of Canada goes as follows. We, free citizens of the province of so-and-so, each and every one of you will sign under the name of his province. We openly express the desire, the free will, as well as the purpose to contract a free union in the Kingdom of Canada de Jure for the aforesaid province under the Constitution of Canada from 1867 to 1982, as per the dispositions stipulated in it, as described at the Conference of Quebec, so that'd be in 1864, as well as the resolution of the aforesaid conference of October 10th, represented under Legislative Federal Assembly, with all the province of Canada united at the bosom of the Federation. Moreover, it is clear that the aforesaid Federation is constituted under the Crown of Canada, with affixing the Great Seal of Canada under the Great Seal of the aforesaid province by and for all the citizens of the country called Canada, born in Canada for the common good, as well as for the right government under a form of a public society non-registered. Therefore, I freely and willingly sign for the name of the citizen of the aforesaid province the actual official act of union in the bosom of the Federation of Canada de jure.